What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 4SL Chapter 66 Can 10,000 Hulks defeat Li Yi? Open black lens bracket, subscribe close black lens bracket. With a decision in mind, Li Yi temporarily imprisoned Banner in the laboratory of Skeetha Industries. In order to prevent Hulk from going online, he even let the Shadow Core directly break Banner's limbs, imprison him in an iron cage, and entangle him with iron chains. In this way, it is useless even if Hulk goes online, his limbs are broken, and he can't fly. After finishing all this, Li Yi turned around and walked out of the laboratory. He had to find an excellent scientist to help him work. Let people guard this place. Before I come back, no one is allowed to enter. Yes, boss. Several bodyguards around Li Yi nodded respectfully, and then guarded the door of the laboratory. Only Keneal left beside Li Yi. In addition to these bodyguards on the bright side, there are also pairs of Scarlet, 377, eyes looming in the shadowy corner of the laboratory. They are the confidence for Li Yi to leave at ease, otherwise, he is not crazy, counting on a few ordinary people to watch over Hulk. And while Li Yi was busy looking for excellent scientists to work for him, on the other side, S.H.I.E.L.D. Neshek also received information from the intelligence agent. Bruce Banner, because of an accidental mutation in the experiment, turned into a green Titan monster. It seems that I can't fully grasp the power of the mutation, and I may be able to control the power of the mutation through training in the future. The potential is huge, and I was taken away by Li Yi in the end. There is naturally more information on intelligence than that, but in summary, this is probably what it means. Since the failure of the last operation, Nick has not been idle, but has used S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligence network to search for special talents, that is, superhumans, and wants to recruit these people to deal with Li Yi. Although he had failed once before, he couldn't give up dealing with Li Yi just because of his failure, and let Li Yi do whatever he wanted. His idea is good, but unfortunately, the search progress is not very satisfactory. After all, transcendents are not Chinese cabbage, so it is not so easy to find them. But this time, the appearance of Hulk caused too much commotion, and the intelligence personnel of S.H.I.E.L.D. naturally focused on Hulk immediately. Although the street where Hulk fought was badly damaged, the buildings on both sides of the street were intact. Therefore, the intelligence personnel of S.H.I.E.L.D. hid in the building to observe Hulk and collect intelligence. It's a pity that Li Yi appeared before his intelligence collection was over, and even put the mighty Hulk on the ground, and took him away, causing his intelligence collection to end early, and he could only hastily pass the information to Nick. Advertisement. After reading the information, Nick tapped the table with his index finger. To be honest, what he was looking for was the strong one among extraordinary people, so after seeing Hulk being taken away by Li Yi, Nick subconsciously gave up on Hulk. After all, what's the point of recruiting people who have already been beaten by Li Yi? Moreover, Hulk has now fallen into Li Yi's hands. If you want to recruit him, you have to find a way to save him first. If you just look at the information on paper, this is undoubtedly a loss-making business. But just when Nick wanted to give up Hulk completely, he couldn't help feeling a little hesitation in his heart. No way, the search for superhumans didn't achieve the effect he wanted. Even so far, Hulk is the first wild superhuman confirmed by him, so if he really wants to give up like this, K is still a little unwilling. Hesitation for a while, and soon, Nick made a call. Director, send me a copy of the battle video of that green guy in New Yori today. Director, all the files of that green guy have been blocked by the military. Today's battle video is the same, whether it was blocked. Go ask for it, just say it's what I want, Nick said unceremoniously, before he had to be afraid of the military, but since the one in the Beigong was delegated power, now he doesn't need to look at anyone's face except the one in the Beigong. Understood the director, I will go to negotiate with them. The member of S.H.I.E.L.D. on the other end of the phone answered and hung up the phone in a hurry. Nick didn't have to wait too long, and after about 20 minutes, 10 emails were sent to his computer. Nick, who was waiting for the message, heard the news, opened the email immediately, and opened the video in it. In an instant, there was a deafening roar in the video. Looking at the tall and imposing Hulk, Nick was stunned at just one glance. Some people's strength needs to be described in words, while some people's strength can be seen only by standing. Advertisement. Obviously, Hulk belongs to the second category. Especially when the Hulk in the video rushed into the military team against the hail of bullets, and the general was directly defeated. Nick couldn't help but look excited. Hulk's powerful strength, powerful defense, and berserk aura, all these are the strong man he has been looking for. Thinking that he almost missed such a treasure just now, Nick couldn't help but feel a little scared, but fortunately, he didn't give up hastily, but watched the video, otherwise, he would really miss Hulk. It's a pity that Hulk's strength was only shown when dealing with the military. Later, when Li Yi appeared in the video, he was completely suppressed. From the invincible god of war at the beginning, he became the last prisoner and was taken away by Li Yi. But even so, it doesn't affect Nick's importance to Hulk. After all, in the video, Hulk resisted tens of thousands of shadows almost by himself. Even if he failed and was arrested in the end, there is no doubt about his strength. Moreover, he also knew that before meeting G, Hulk had unknowingly vented a lot. Rather than saying that he lost to Li Yi and failed to be arrested, it is better to say that he was exhausted and failed to be arrested. Therefore, after watching the video, Nick decided instantly that he wanted to rescue Hulk, because he saw hope in Hulk against Li Yi. One Hulk is so strong, how about more? 10, 100, 1000, 10,000 1.0? However, how to save it needs to be studied in detail. For now, let's find out where Hulk is being held. While thinking about it, Nick acted quickly, picked up the phone on the table, started making calls, and issued several orders one after another to monitor Li Yi and search for Hulk. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been paying attention to Li Yi's whereabouts, and Li Yi has nothing to hide, so Nick received the news shortly after the call. Hulk was taken to Stark Industries at an unknown location. Also, Li Yi left Stark Industries half an hour ago. Hearing these two pieces of news, Nick's eyes suddenly lit up. Li Yi is not by Hulk's side now, so his idea of saving Hulk has a few more chances of success. Chapter 67 Reed Richards. If you don't come, please tie him up, open black lens bracket subscribe close black lens bracket. S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick is plotting how to save the Hulk. On the other side, at the Empire State Building, Li Yi fell into deep thought as he looked at the information provided by Jin Bin on many top scientists in Niuyo City. Don't get me wrong, he is not thinking about which of these scientists is suitable to help him, but that he basically doesn't know these scientists. Although the information given by Jin Bin all marked their scientific research results. But for Li Yi, those scientific research results are like reading a book from heaven, which is completely incomprehensible. Just when he was about to appoint a random guy to work for him, suddenly, a familiar name appeared on the list. Reed Richards. Seeing this name, Li Yi was stunned for a moment, and then related memories quickly appeared in his mind. Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four is also a genius proficient in all fields of science. But in terms of scientific research strength, Tony is a little worse than him. Suddenly, Li Yi, who had some hesitation, made a decision in his heart. 21. Just him. Li Yi circled Reed's name with a pen, and then threw it to Jin Bing who was facing him. Jin Bing took the list and glanced at it, a hint of hesitation appeared on his face. Seeing this scene, Li Yi raised his eyebrows. What? It's hard to please. It's really difficult. Jin Bin nodded, not trying to be brave at all. Relying on the many patents he has developed, he has already realized the freedom of wealth and does not lack investment. Moreover, he has long stopped accepting the employment of other people. Currently, he only develops projects developed by himself. In addition, I have inquired. This person is currently studying human genes and is planning to go to outer space to obtain some information. I am afraid that he will not accept employment at present. Jin Bing said helplessly, and scolded the subordinate who sorted out the materials in his heart. Why should such a scientist who has no time be put on the list? Isn't it just to add to his troubles? Xiao Jin, you are the underground king of Niuyue, when did you become a bad guy? Since I can't invite anyone, just tie him up. Anyway, I want to see this guy appear in front of me today. Sir, wouldn't this be too good? Advertisement? Jin Bing blinked his eyes and said in a hesitant tone. Although he is domineering, he usually treats people with courtesy when he invites people to do research. After all, you will need other people's knowledge next. If you offend people, even if you invite someone, he can add something to your research at will, and he can directly cheat people. What's wrong? Worried he's tampering with the research. A smile appeared on Li Yi's face and said slowly. Hearing this, Jin Bing finally realized that this man is not afraid of death, trying to kill him is probably harder than destroying the world. After realizing this, Jin Bing no longer had any worries in his heart. Okay, sir, I'll send someone to ask for it. Well, go, I heard that he has a team, it's best to invite them all for me. Understood. Jin Bin nodded, turned and left the office, and gave orders. In the office, Li Yi turned around through the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at all the living beings below, and couldn't help thinking in his heart, whether he should think of a way to completely subdue Reed. It is foreseeable that he will definitely conduct similar research in the future, after all, there are many good things in this world. Li Yi was originally interested in these things. But you can't find someone everywhere for every research, so the best way is to find a master to serve yourself at any time. There is no doubt that Reed fits his criteria well. The point is that Reed is not the Mr. Fantastic in the future, so it is not difficult to handle. If it's Mr. Fantastic in the future, Li Yi will have to spend a little more time trying to handle him. With many thoughts in his mind, Li Yi was not in a hurry and waited patiently. On the other hand, Nick, who knew that Li Yi was not in Stark Industries, acted immediately. He originally wanted Tony to lead a team to participate in this operation, after all, it was his company, but thinking about Tony's state, Nick directly gave up this unrealistic idea. As far as Tony's current state is concerned, once he is released, he will definitely cause trouble, even if he meets Li Yi, whether Tony may come back or not is a matter of debate. So, after a bit of thought, Nick finally decided to let Steve lead the team. With people in mind, Nick immediately got up and left the office, walking towards the training room. Before approaching the training room, a dull bang sound came from the training room continuously. Advertisement. Hearing the dense boxing sounds inside, Nick shook his head helplessly. Obviously, the failure to encircle Li Yi before had a great impact on Steve, otherwise he wouldn't be in the training room every day. Squeak. In the training room, Steve crazily hit the sandbags, pulling out phantoms with his hands in midair, and he heard the sound of the door opening behind him, but he didn't make any sense. Nick, who originally wanted to wait for Steve to finish his round before speaking, saw that Steve had no response to his arrival, so he had no choice but to speak. Captain, I have a task and I need your help. Not interested, find someone else. Steve refused without nodding. At this moment, he only wants to focus on improving his own strength, and then blow Li Yi's head off when they meet next time. He is not interested in other things. Hearing this, Nick immediately said calmly, this mission is related to Li Yi. After the words fell, the 77 sandbags hit by Steve flew out in an instant. Afterwards, Steve turned his head to look at Nick and asked, "Are you going to attack Li Yi again?" Ahem, not really. Then what else has to do with Li Yi? The task this time was to save someone, and this person was captured by Li Yi. Nick explained the reason, and then handed over a file. Seeing this, Steve didn't have the slightest hesitation, and directly ended up flipping through the information. For him now, as long as he can add trouble to Li Yi, he is happy to do it. However, after reading Hulk's information, he couldn't help but frown. Are you sure the guy the first need to rescue is so strong? Can he fight against tens of thousands of black-clothed demons alone? I am sure. Okay, then I will ask a question, since he is so strong, how did he get caught? This should be careless, after all, that guy has only been awakening for a short time. Okay, if this is the case, then I'll make a trip and call me after you arrange someone. Okay, no problem. Nick nodded, then turned and left the training room without delay. He didn't heave a sigh of relief until he walked out of the gate of the training room, because the information he gave Steve just now was incomplete. Chapter 68. What is the biggest feeling after knowing that I have contacted Li Yi? Open black lens bracket, subscribe, close black lens bracket. The information Nick gave Steve only described Hulk's strength, but didn't say how many military and civilians he killed. He knew that if Steve had known the news, 100% would reject the rescue mission. In fact, if given a choice, Nick wouldn't want to recruit a guy with terrifying strength who might lose control at any time. But isn't it impossible? In order to deal with Li Yi, he can only unite all the forces he can unite. In the face of dealing with Li Yi, it doesn't matter how many people Hulk killed, anyway, it will not be more than Li Yi. Definitely, the point is not this, the point is that Banner can be controlled, but Li Yi obviously cannot be controlled. This is where the biggest conflict between Li Yi and Malegian lies. If Li Yi is willing to compromise and make concessions, even if Li Yi killed tens of thousands of people in the military, Malegian doesn't care at all. Just look at Hulk. Without Li Yi's intervention, how many people Hulk killed and caused civilian casualties in the early stage? But in the end, it didn't change into a superhero. Therefore, the so-called hatred is empty talk for a country like Malegian. What they really value is their interests. Closer to home, after taking over the mission, Steve immediately left S.H.I.E.L.D. with an elite agent team and rushed towards Stark Industry. An hour later, the vehicles of the S.H.I.E.L.D. people parked on the street outside the Stark Industry. "Captain, what should we do next? Do we want to infiltrate in disguise?" In the car, an agent asked. Hearing this, Steve couldn't help showing a smile on his face. "Do you know what is the biggest feeling after I got in touch with Li Yi?" After the words fell, everyone looked at each other suspiciously, and then shook their heads one after another. Seeing this, Steve didn't give a shit, and directly solved the mystery and said, "That is, don't follow the rules too much in everything. We don't know when that guy will come back. As far as I know, there is no strong person in the Stark Industry, so just rush with me and force your way open tortoise shell bracket." "Captain, this is not good, this is Stark Industry, if we forcefully break in, it may cause a big impact." That's the old calendar you're talking about. If Tony was in charge of Stark, he would naturally have such great power, but now it's that villain who controls Stark. Do you think anyone would trouble us for a scoundrel? However, remember one thing. After entering, try not to kill people. The people inside are also forced to help someone. Advertisement, Steve said solemnly, and when they heard his words, everyone suddenly realized that it seemed to be beautiful and sharp. Who will come to trouble them because of Li Yi? The answer is naturally no at the moment. Everyone began to organize their equipment. They were equipped with 2 firearms, an action pistol, and a stun gun. The electric voltage was enough to stun a person instantly, but it would not harm the living area. 3 minutes later, Steve said, "Are you ready?" Everyone nodded silently. "Okay, let's get started." After speaking, Steve took the lead and got out of the car, heading straight for Stark Industries. Soon, a group of people came to the gate of Stark Industry. The security guard at the gate looked at a group of menacing people and was about to call for support. But at this time, a well-known agent had an idea and shouted, "FBI." As soon as these words came out, the actions of the 2 security personnel stopped suddenly, and in the next second, they turned around with smiles on their faces and walked towards another place as if they hadn't seen Steve and his party. "Simmy, let's have a drink together after get off work." "Okay, no problem." The 2 talked and laughed and disappeared at the gate. Steve, who was already planning to do something, looked at this scene, was taken aback for a moment, then couldn't help laughing, and then went directly to Stark Industry. In the lobby on the first floor, everyone in Stark had already noticed them at the door. He also heard the FBI that the agent just shouted. Therefore, after Steve and his group entered the lobby on the first floor, everyone in Stark Industries seemed to be deaf and blind, completely ignoring Steve and his group. The reason for this phenomenon is simply because of Li Yi's high-pressure policy. In the past, everyone in Stark Industries didn't say how easy the work was, but at least there was no pressure. After all, their group's arms have never had to worry about selling. But automatically, after Li Yi took over, the military directly cut off the cooperation with Stark Industries. Advertisement: the military order is a major customer of Stark Industries. Now that the major customer is gone, their sales will naturally be greatly affected. However, Li Yi once said that performance must be guaranteed, otherwise, the matter will be left behind. Under the threat of life and death, the top management of Stark Industries can only find a way to fill the gap after the lack of military orders. By the way, the pressure on them was transferred to the lower-level employees. In this way, layer by layer, if Li Yi can still get the approval of Stark Industrial employees, then it will really be hell. In short, things went much smoother than Steve and the others expected, and soon they came outside the Stark Industries laboratory. Looking at the men in suits guarding the door of the laboratory. Before they could react, Steve threw out the shield in his hand instantly. Before his shield was thrown into the Shadow Kingdom, the current shield was rebuilt for him by Nick. The material is more top-notch, and vibranium is also added to it. Bang bang bang. A flying shield, without any accident. Li Yi's several bodyguards were all knocked out. Captain, beautiful. Perhaps it was because the mission process was too easy. After watching Steve's operation, several agents praised him one after another. Seeing this, Steve raised his hand to press down, signaling for everyone to be quiet, and then said, "Okay, stop boasting. Okay, the task is completed. I will let you boast enough when I go back. Now, perform the task first." Yes. Everyone nodded, then quickly stepped forward and began to decipher the code minister on the door of the laboratory. It can't be said to be cracked. They directly entered the password, and the door of the laboratory opened immediately. No way, the helm of Stark Industries is in their shield. How could they not know the password of the laboratory gate? As the door opened, the situation in the laboratory immediately appeared before everyone's eyes, and they saw Banner tied up in the iron cage at a glance. Seeing the target, the eyes of many agents lit up. 2 agents quickly stepped forward to break through the iron cage, while the rest stood guard at the door of the laboratory. As for Steve, he was focusing on the environment in the laboratory at the moment. I don't know if it's because the lighting equipment is not turned on, but the laboratory looks a bit dark at the moment. And in the darkness, shadows squirm. Chapter 69b ****** D. Can the information you provide be accurate once? Open black lens bracket, subscribe, close black lens bracket. Hurry up and get ready to evacuate. Steve looked at the dark environment around him and couldn't help but urge him. His intuition told him that this place was not safe. I don't even know if he was frightened by the black shadows under Li Yi's command before, leaving behind a shadow. He always felt that there seemed to be pairs of eyes staring at him in the darkness, which was very similar to the feeling when he was surrounded by those black-clothed demons. Picture. That's not right. According to intelligence records, the devil in black usually only appears where Li Yi appears. So far, they haven't found the black-clothed demon appearing where Li Yi isn't. And Li Yi is not in Stark Industry now. He has arranged a policeman at the gate of Stark Industry. If Li Yi comes back, the policeman will notify him as soon as possible. Then there should be no black-clothed devil here. Thinking like this, Steve was still a little worried, so he couldn't help contacting the outside police officers. Have you found any trace of Li Yi? No, Captain, there is nothing abnormal here. I don't have any here either. Within a 5-kilometer radius, the vehicle 640 that Li Yi was riding in was not seen. Okay, continue to be vigilant, and let me know as soon as there is any news. Clear. Received. In Steve's headset, the voices of peripheral members kept ringing, but he always felt that he had overlooked something important, but right now he didn't have time to think about it. Seeing the 2 agents who still hadn't opened the cage, Steve frowned and walked over. Get out of the way, let me come. Hearing this, the 2 agents hurriedly stepped aside with shame on their faces. The cage that held Banner was naturally not an ordinary cage, but a cage made of high-strength alloy. Even if a lion or an elephant were locked in, they would never get out. The key point is that the cage uses a coded lock. They don't know the code, so they can only crack it temporarily, so the efficiency cannot be improved. Before coming to the cage, Steve glanced at the combination lock, then ignored it directly, and put his hands directly on the iron bars of the cage. Crunch. Advertisement. There was a sound, and under Steve's great force, the cage gradually began to shapeshift. While Steve was concentrating on dealing with the cage, in the dark experiment, a black shadow slowly flowed towards the door of the laboratory. The shadow was silent, and the shield agent guarding the entrance of the laboratory had been paying attention to the entrance of the passage twice, and did not notice the situation behind him at all. Soon, the shadow stopped behind the agents at the door, and then a series of ghost figures slowly stepped out of it. Looking at the shield agent whose back was facing them, the ghost directly raised his hand to cover the mouths and noses of several people, and when they were about to struggle, he cut the throats of several people with a swipe of the short blade in his hand. Just like that, several agents guarding the door died silently. After doing all this, the ghosts merged into the shadows again, and then returned to the laboratory. After the shadow returned, the laboratory door that was originally opened also began to slowly close. Steve, who was concentrating on unpacking the cage, didn't hear any movement outside the door, but he felt the change of light. The lights in the lab were already dim. The door was closed, making the light in the laboratory even darker. Realizing this, Steve turned his head abruptly, looked behind him, and saw the door of the laboratory just close. Alert! In an instant, Steve shouted loudly, and the 2 agents beside him reacted immediately, turned around quickly, and pulled out the guns from their waists. What's the matter, Captain? Seeing that there was no one behind him, the agent on Steve's left couldn't help asking in a low voice. However, Steve didn't answer him at the moment, because he finally remembered what he had overlooked. The information Nick provided on Li Yi, CBDI, has never been accurate. I was foolish enough to believe it. He believed that Li Yi was indeed not in this laboratory, otherwise Li Yi's character would have come out in the first place. But now, he is sure that there must be a devil in black in this laboratory. Realizing this, Steve's complexion couldn't help but become extremely ugly, and he had already scolded Nick bloody in his heart. B asterisk 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 D. Can the information you provide be accurate once? Fake. He cursed angrily in his heart, but he also knew that at this moment, anger could not solve any problems, so he took a deep breath and forcibly calmed down. Advertisement, go, turn on the power switch of the laboratory. Steve ordered. Hearing that, the agent on the left didn't have any hesitation, and quickly walked towards the control room of the laboratory. As elites, before they acted, they naturally studied the drawings in the laboratory. So, it was his first time here, but they were familiar with it as if they had been here 1,000 times. However, as soon as his body disappeared into the darkness, Steve discovered that the agent had lost contact. There was no movement at all. Realizing this, Steve's face darkened slightly, and the only agent left beside him couldn't help it. He is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., yes, but this is the first time he has faced a black shadow. The reason is very simple: those who have fought Sombra before are almost dead. Although he had read a lot of information about Sombra before coming here. However, no matter how detailed the intelligence depicts, when facing the black shadow, you should panic and have to panic. Captain, what should we do now? The agent asked nervously. Hearing this, Steve scanned the surrounding darkness with icy eyes, and said directly, shoot into the dark places around, and force them to come out. Oh, good. Hearing Steve's order, the agent started shooting without saying a word. Da. Fierce gunfire rang out suddenly, and the gunfire kept flickering in the darkness. With the help of the gunfire generated by the gunfire, Steve finally vaguely saw the situation in the darkness. On the walls around the laboratory, black faces were sleeping with their eyes closed, but at this moment when the agent fired, these sleeping shadows were finally awakened. In an instant, pairs of scarlet eyes began to appear in the darkness. 1 pair, 2 pairs, filled the entire laboratory in a blink of an eye, looking like a large densely packed area. The agent, who finally mustered up the courage to shoot, saw this scene and screamed in fright. It's not that he's timid, it's that the scene in front of him is too terrifying. Not only him, but even Steve beside him felt a bit of creepiness at the moment. He thought that there might be some black-clothed demons hidden in the darkness, but he didn't expect so many. Look at the number of dense eyes, at least more than thousands of black demons gathered in this laboratory. Chapter 70. Aren't you that green titan? Transform quickly. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Do it. At this moment, Steve couldn't bear it anymore, roared angrily, and then rushed directly towards the shadow core. Seeing Steve's fearless charge, the almost frightened agent finally regained his senses. At that moment, he couldn't help but suppress the fear in his heart, picked up the gun on the ground, and started shooting with his supernatural scarlet eyes. Bang. 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 Needless to say, after calming down, this guy's marksmanship is really good, and he scattered 4 or 5 ghosts in a blink of an eye. But his actions also attracted the attention of a troll at this moment. At this moment, the troll walked towards the agent with slow but firm steps. The agent turned pale with fright and shot crazily. But the troll is not a black shadow. Although the defense of the troll is worse than that of the Hulk, it cannot be broken by a pistol. Directly ignoring the bullets whizzing towards him, the troll quickly came to the agent, looking down at the agent. There was no emotion in the scarlet eyes. He directly raised the futon and landed on the agent's head. The agent, who was so frightened that he couldn't move, could only watch helplessly as the troll's big hand approached. In the end, the entire head of the agent was surrounded by the giant hands of the troll, and the next second, the troll exerted a little force, snap. There was a sound like a watermelon bursting, and the agent's head was completely split open. Steve, who was constantly colliding with the shadow core, also saw this scene, and he yelled angrily, not because he didn't want to save people, but in fact, he had no time to save people at all. The shadow core was besieging him frantically, although his training during this period had increased his strength a lot. But there is still no qualitative metamorphosis. With his current strength, he can only survive the siege of Sombra for a little longer. As for the rest, it's not realistic at all. Definitely, if he throws out the shield in his hand, it is not impossible to save that agent. It's just that with the lessons learned from S.H.I.E.L.D. being taken away, now, he doesn't dare to let S.H.I.E.L.D. go easily. Otherwise, without the shield, his combat power would drop by at least 20%. And when Steve insisted on fighting under the siege of the shadows, Li Yi, who was far away in the Empire State Building at this moment, rubbed his eyes inexplicably. As the master of the Shadow Kingdom, everything about the shadow is to serve him. Advertisement including what they see, Li Yi can also see through their eyes. However, this kind of seeing is not just seen by one shadow, but seen by all shadows. In other words, if he uses this ability, it is basically equivalent to linking the sight of all the shadows. What kind of experience is it for a person to see things with thousands of pairs of eyes? Discomfort, nausea. When you can see things from multiple angles in an instant, the influx of a large amount of image information will make your head completely unbearable. Therefore, in the past, Li Yi basically would not use this ability. Just now he also felt the black shadow in the laboratory move, so he used this ability to take a look, but it made his brain hurt. Definitely, it is also possible to only watch a black shadow, but this will not work until he has fully loaded all the templates. Although he now controls 3 shadow core, but not all of them after all, and there are 6 shadow core that are not under his control. Therefore, certain abilities and skills belonging to the Sombra Master are also difficult to fully display. To put it bluntly, he is just a half controller now, so naturally he can't do some seemingly ordinary but very delicate operations. Sitting on the office chair calmed down for a while, Li Yi returned to normal, and then continued to look down at the book. ignoring the situation in the laboratory at all. He likes a saying very much, the hunter and the prey are always relative. In the situation where there is no way to see the future, no one knows who is the hunter and who is the prey. The answer can only be known after the dust settles. Stark Industries, the underground laboratory, relying on the shield in their hands and the recently improved strength. Although the siege of the Shadow Core made Steve uncomfortable, it was far from the suffocating feeling of last time. There is no way, the location of the laboratory is so big, it can only accommodate thousands of shadows in total. To deal with ordinary people, so many shadows are naturally enough, but to deal with Steve, it is not enough. However, Steve is just in a stalemate now. The shadow can't do anything to him, he also can't do anything to the shadow. Definitely, he could still choose to escape, but if he escaped, the mission would fail, and the people he brought would die in vain. Therefore, after thinking for a long time, Steve suddenly looked at the sleeping Banner in the cage. Flowers please. Now, if you want to break the game, you can only rely on this guy. Advertisement, hey, wake up, don't sleep. Steve shouted loudly, the loud voice echoing in the lab, even drowning out the sound of the battle. At first, Banner didn't respond, but as Steve kept yelling, he couldn't help frowning, and then his eyelids flicked slightly and slowly opened. Waking up from the coma, Banner immediately felt the pain in his neck that was about to break, and the next second, before he could cry out, the pain of broken limbs flooded into his mind frantically through the nerves. Hiss. In an instant, Banner gasped in pain, but it also woke up his drowsy head. After regaining consciousness, Banner immediately saw the scene outside the cage. In the darkness, the dense scarlets floated in the air, looking like will-o'-the-wisps, scaring Banner by huge amounts of fright. But before he could cry out in surprise, Steve, who was in the battle, saw that Banner woke up, and his face suddenly showed a gleam of joy, and his tone was mixed with surprise. You're awake, I'm here to save you. The current situation, as you can see, I am haunted by these ghost things. You transform quickly, break the cage, and leave here with me. 11. Steve's voice kept ringing, and Banner was stunned for a moment, and then he suppressed the pain and said, I can't transform. As soon as these words came out, Steve was dumbfounded, as if he had been struck by lightning. Aren't you that green titan? Then you change quickly? I won't. At this moment, Steve swore that he really wanted to die. He risked his life to save people, but Banner actually told him that he would not transform. Is today April Fool's Day? Or is God just kidding him? Are you kidding me? Steve roared angrily. At this moment he completely broke the defense. He led the team to kill so many people. Is it just to save a piece of trash? I'm not kidding you, I said. I won't, Banner said a little angrily. He had already suffered a great change, and now there was such an inexplicable person who doubted him. Banner was also angry with Fan. Chapter 71. Damn it. Why are you hitting me? Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Just when a trace of anger rose in Banner's heart, in an instant, his heart couldn't help beating rapidly, and a familiar feeling hit Banner's heart. His body started to heat up, but his skin still turned green. Feeling something was wrong with him, Banner couldn't help but bewildered. Again? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, an uncontrollable irritability completely overwhelmed him, causing his consciousness to fall asleep. Banner went offline, and Hulk went online again. On the other side, Steve, who was struggling in the siege of the Shadow Core, was thinking about how to break the situation next, and he didn't expect Banner to be so unreliable. Before he could think of a way, suddenly, a roar full of anger resounded suddenly, shaking the entire laboratory. Hearing the sound, Steve turned his head to look, and suddenly saw that Banner in the cage disappeared at some point, and a green titan appeared, 287, in the iron cage, squeezing the iron cage densely without any gaps. Hulk was very angry. He was caught and locked up in such a small place just after he went offline to sleep, which made him feel uncomfortable all over. He roared, subconsciously trying to break free from the cage, but soon, he realized that his limbs were all broken, and he couldn't use any strength at all. The pain crazily stimulated his mind, constantly adding to the anger in his heart. Chai's salary increase made his anger grow higher and higher. Finally, when his anger reached a certain level, his physical fitness strengthened again. A crackling sound came from his body, and the limbs that had been broken had completely recovered with the strengthening of his physical fitness. Limbs recovered, Hulk was finally able to control his body. Roar. A roar suddenly came out of his mouth, and then he struggled slightly with his hands, and the iron chains tied to him instantly collapsed, and then when he tried to stand up from the cage. The cage made of high-strength materials suddenly trembled uncontrollably. Accompanied by a distorted sound, finally, the cage was completely broken open. Hulk completely broke free from all restraints, and looked at the many Shadow Core. Without hesitation, Hulk picked up the shattered iron cage and slammed it at the Shadow Core. There was a violent whistling sound, and the iron cage fell directly into the crowd of the Shadow Core, killing hundreds of shadows in an instant. Boom! Huge amounts of roaring sounded suddenly, and a big hole was smashed out on the floor of the laboratory. Advertisement. Steve stared blankly at this scene, his eyes filled with deep surprise. This strength is too abnormal. Even if he tried his best, he couldn't achieve such an effect, and Hulk, it was just a random blow. At this moment, he immediately decided to take back all the previous words. It is not a question of whether it is worth saving this guy, but it is so worth it. With this strength alone, no matter how expensive the rescue is, it is worth it. Steve was full of surprises thinking. On the other side, after Hulk smashed out of the iron cage, he rushed directly into the Shadow Army like a revived monster, raging wildly. Thousands of shadows can suppress Steve, but they can't suppress Hulk. He was a monster that resisted the attack of tens of thousands of shadows before. Under his frenzied killing, the Black Shadow Corps showed a rare situation where the more they killed, the less they killed. It's not that the Sombra Corps lost their immortal ability, but that Hulk killed too fast, or in pieces, which caused the Sombra Corps' resurrection speed to not keep up with Hulk's killing speed, so this made the Sombra Corps the number of kills is getting smaller and smaller. Steve, who had witnessed this scene with his own eyes, looked at such a scene with a look of surprise and joy on his face. In the past, the constant Black Shadow Corps made them extremely troubled and fearful. This is the first time he discovered that the number of black-clothed demons will also decrease, and they are not really endless. This unexpected discovery made him very pleasantly surprised, and the shadow that had shrouded his heart for a long time had dissipated a lot at this moment. He is not afraid that the enemy will be difficult to deal with, but he is afraid that there is no hope of dealing with it. Have to say, this is a perfect misunderstanding. Li Yi only left 1,000 black shadows here, which made the black shadows seem to kill less and less. Otherwise, even if Hulk was exhausted, he would not be able to shake the black shadows even if hundreds of millions of black shadows were dispatched. Hey, big man, don't kill, let's get out of here first. Seeing that Hulk was still entangled with the shadow, Steve couldn't help but speak. Hearing this, Hulk turned his head to look at Steve, and in the next second, he immediately raised his fist the size of a sandbag, to kill Steve. F*K. What are you doing? Steve was taken aback by Hulk's action, and couldn't help cursing. In order to hide the fact that Hulk slaughtered the army, in the information Nick gave him, there was no such thing as Hulk being indiscriminate between enemy and friend. Advertisement so, Steve had a tragedy in an instant. What he thought was a helper suddenly became an opponent. Boom. 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 Hulk's giant fists kept coming down. Steve dodged and cursed, trying to make Hulk stop. But Hulk didn't care at all, driven by the anger in his heart, he just wanted to tear everything in front of him. For a moment, the scene in the laboratory couldn't help but become weird. Hulk chased Steve's hammer violently, making the Black Shadow a spectator instead. Damn it. B*******************. D. Why are you hitting me? Steve snarled, now that he had noticed that the shadow that the Hulk had hunted 4 weeks ago was being resurrected. If he continued to stay here, he would be entangled by the shadows again when all the shadows were resurrected, and he would be in trouble. Thinking of this, Steve suddenly threw out the shield in his hand and smashed it hard on Hulk's head, causing Hulk to stagger. Catching the shield that flew back, Steve looked at Hulk, who was getting more and more angry, and said, "Big idiot, come and chase me." After saying that, Steve turned around and rushed towards the door of the laboratory, throwing out the shield in his hand again. With a bang, the door of the laboratory was smashed open on the spot. Watching this scene, Steve rushed out of the room directly without any hesitation. Hulk, who was staring at Steve, saw that Steve was going to run away, so naturally he refused to give up, and then he roared angrily and chased after him. As the two left, the surrounding shadows were about to catch up, but suddenly, their figures stopped, and then they turned around and disappeared into the darkness one by one. Stark Industries, first floor lobby. Boom! There was a loud noise, and Steve came out from the wall, looked at the Stark employees in the hall, and shouted, "Get out of here." But as soon as he finished speaking, there was a louder bang, and Hulk chased after him. He picked up a broken door and smashed it directly at Steve. The whistling sound sounded behind him, making Steve feel a sense of danger. He didn't dare to stay at the moment, and rushed out of the Stark Industrial Building. Hulk also followed, and as the two left, the lobby on the first floor, the Stark employees who had been convenient for Steve and others, died or were injured. Chapter 72. I found you. Are you ready to die? Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Girls, city streets. Steve ran wildly, and Hulk was chasing after him. Because of the chase and escape of the two, I don't know how many people were affected along the way, causing everyone to suffer an indiscriminate disaster. While running away, Steve began to contact Nick, and soon the phone was connected, and Nick's voice rang out on the other end of the phone. "Captain, how is the situation? Has anyone been rescued?" Hearing this, Steve suddenly felt the blood pressure in his body soar, and couldn't help roaring, "Nick, tell me, do you know that this guy is crazy? He can't tell the difference between himself and us." After the words fell, Nick did not answer the question, but quickly asked, "Where are you?" "I'm on the champs, F*K. Steve replied quickly. Although he was very angry, he also knew that now was not the time to ask these questions, so he was very cooperative. After getting Steve's specific location, Nick quickly came to the command hall and said, "Call me the location of Champs-Élysées Avenue." 21. Following his order, everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. began to operate one after another. After a while, the screen of Champs Avenue was called up on the big screen in the command room. Through satellite monitoring, the Champs Avenue was displayed. Steve and Hulk, who were frantically chasing and fleeing. Watching this scene, Nick immediately ordered, "Now, immediately draw a route to the suburbs." "Understood, sir." The agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. operated quickly, and soon a map of the shortest route to the outskirts of the city appeared on the screen. Keeping the road map in mind, Nick immediately said, "Steve, listen, you need to lead that big guy out of the city now, and I will guide you next, do you understand?" "Got it, tell me." Steve suppressed the anger in his heart. Then, under Nick's guidance, Steve took Hulk quickly towards the suburbs. And here, Nick wasn't idle either, he was directing Steve, and at the same time arranged for people to rush to the outskirts of the city, preparing to ask Hulk to bring him back. The place where Steve and the two were located was not far from the outskirts of the city, and with the two of them running with all their strength, their speed was not weaker than that of a normal vehicle. 10 minutes later, Steve and Hulk finally left the city and came to the suburbs. And when they arrived, SHIELD's agent also set up an ambush here, waiting for the two of Steve to appear. The 10 orders immediately spread to everyone's headsets. Focus fire, launch tranquilizer bombs, hypnotic ability gas. Advertisement. After the words fell, gunshots rang out one after another, and hypnotic ability gas roared directly towards Hulk. Boom. Boom. There was a muffled sound, and the hypnotic ability gas fell on Hulk, and then exploded into a cloud of red smoke covering Hulk. As for the anesthesia bomb, after hitting Hulk's body, there was no way to break through his skin defense, so naturally it had no effect. Seeing this, the on-site commander directly stopped firing the anesthesia bombs, but shot out all the hypnotic ability gas. Soon, the red mist will completely submerge Hulk's huge body. As a large amount of fog was substituted into the body by Hulk's breath, his mind, which was originally filled with anger, gradually became dizzy, and the pace of chasing Steve became slower and slower, and finally stopped gradually. Noticing that there was no movement behind him, Steve stopped involuntarily, turned around and looked behind him, with a panting look on his face. Being crazily chased by Hulk, Steve was also under a lot of pressure, coupled with the long-term running, a trace of long-lost exhaustion flooded into his heart. However, right now, Hulk has not won, but it is not time to rest. Shaking his head, forcing the exhaustion out of his mind, Steve continued to stare at Hulk. Fortunately, this time, without any accident, under the use of the hypnotic ability gas, soon, with a loud bang, Hulk's body completely fell to the ground. Afterwards, Hulk's figure gradually shrank and turned back into Dr. Banner. Seeing that Hulk had turned back into Banner, the members of S.H.I.E.L.D. who had been prepared for a long time stepped forward and took Banner away. Steve also had a gloomy face, followed the crowd, and returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. Half an hour later, in S.H.I.E.L.D., Steve saw Nick. Immediately, he couldn't help but quicken his pace, and walked quickly towards Nick. Seeing this, Nick watched the aggressive Steve approach him with a calm face. "Thank you, Captain." Without waiting for Steve to speak, Shucky spoke first. Hearing this, Steve ignored his relationship, but asked with a face full of questions, "Did you know that guy is uncontrollable?" "Just like that, I can't wait to throw Nick over the shoulder." "That's right, advertisement, then why do you want me to save him? Do you know how many civilians died along the way because of him?" "No, then, now, tell me why, to deal with Li Yi." What a joke, just like that guy, can he help us deal with Li Yi then?" Steve didn't believe it. After all, Hulk couldn't even tell the enemy from himself, so he chased him all the way. How could such an out-of-control man help them? Steve didn't believe it. Banner has just been awakening. It's normal that he can't control that power now, but after he learns to control that power, he will be our good helper. Really? What about those who died? Steve 173 stared at Nick with wide eyes. It was said that this time, Nick couldn't help being silent for a while, and then said in a heavy tone, "Necessary sacrifices are necessary, and everything is for more people to survive. What's the difference between your face and those disgusting politicians?" Steve laughed angrily, and after speaking, he turned around and left, plunged into the training room, venting his emotions crazily. Seeing Steve leave in a fit of anger, the agent beside Nick worried, "The captain will be fine." "No, don't worry, he will figure it out." Nick's deep words sounded, and his tone was full of trust in Steve. And just as Nick was comforting the agent, at this moment, S.H.I.E.L.D., in a certain detention room, Banner was locked up here. Although Nick believes that Banner can control his power, some necessary defensive measures are still needed before he can really learn to control his power. Otherwise, once Banner gets out of control again, it will be another disaster. But just after the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. put Banner in the detention room and turned to leave, suddenly, on the ground, in Banner's shadow, a pair of scarlet eyes slowly opened, and then, a ghost walked away from Banner's shadow, come out and blend into the shadow of the detention room. On the top floor of the Empire State Building, Li Yi was sitting in the office, with a smile on his lips. "I'm here for you." Chapter 73. Enter S.H.I.E.L.D. The shadows are like a tide. Random killing. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. People from S.H.I.E.L.D. kept making trouble for themselves again and again. If Li Yi didn't have any thoughts in his mind, it would be impossible. "It's just because I haven't been able to find the specific location of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I temporarily let them go." Before, he asked Jin Bing to investigate the location of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Jin Bing activated all his network, but even the upper-level people knew the exact location of S.H.I.E.L.D. is very few. Therefore, when he met Hulk, he had an idea in his mind to use Hulk to catch S.H.I.E.L.D. He knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. had been searching for the paranormal forces themselves. Then Hulk is the owner of such a huge pile of extraordinary abilities, will S.H.I.E.L.D. ignore it? Anyway, if Li Yi doesn't believe it, they will turn a blind eye. That's why he left people at Stark Industries and left on his own. As for leaving 1,000 shadows to guard, it is naturally to confuse the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. After all, even if you are acting, you have to act realistically. Therefore, not only was the whole thing surrounding Hulk in Li Yi's plan, but it was also within his expectations. Now, through planning, S.H.I.E.L.D. was finally exposed in front of Li Yi. With a smile on the corner of his mouth, Li Yi stood up slowly, and then his figure exploded, turning into a black mist, and completely disappeared in place. S.H.I.E.L.D. At this moment, Nick is leading a group of people towards the cell where Banner is being held. He intends to wake Banner up and have a good chat with Banner. Soon, a group of people came to the prison room, and just when they were about to go forward to open the door of the prison room, suddenly, a shadow appeared on the ground. Under the illumination of the light, the shadows appear very abruptly, and it can even be said to be abnormal. A member of S.H.I.E.L.D. looked at the shadow on the ground and asked subconsciously, "What is this?" After the words fell, Nick in the crowd suddenly changed color. "Everyone, sound the first level alarm, someone is intruding." Nick roared and drank, and began to back away quickly. Although the others reacted a bit slower than him, they quickly reacted and backed away quickly, away from the detention room. Then, within the entire S.H.I.E.L.D., a piercing siren sounded crazily, causing the expressions of all the staff in S.H.I.E.L.D. to change instantly. According to security regulations, S.H.I.E.L.D. will sound such an alarm only when foreign enemies invade. Advertisement. All of a sudden, everyone took action, put on their equipment and prepared to fight. At the entrance of S.H.I.E.L.D., a large number of security personnel gathered, armed with guns, ready to defend against the coming enemies. However, just as they set up their positions, Nick's voice came from the headset. "All armed personnel, immediately go to the number 1 cell. The enemy is in the number 1 cell. Repeat, the enemy is in the number 1 cell." Hearing Nick's words, everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. was bewildered, wondering why the enemy suddenly ran to the number 1 cell. However, although they couldn't figure it out, they still rushed to the number 1 detention room as soon as possible. But at this moment, outside the number 1 cell, as the shadows filled the door, a troll figure slowly appeared at the door, and began to tear down the door. At the end of the corridor, Nick watched this scene, and suddenly remembered something, and ordered, "Inject hallucinogenic drugs into the number 1 cell." However, as soon as he finished speaking, there was only a bang, and the door of the number 1 detention room was violently broken open. Seeing this, Nick couldn't help but sighed, "It's too late." In the next second, he saw Li Yi slowly walking out of the detention room, looking around with curiosity on his face. "This is S.H.I.E.L.D., doesn't it look great?" Li Yi looked at it and commented, then his eyes turned and he saw Nick at the end of the passage. Immediately, a smile appeared on Li Yi's face. "Nick. Fury, we meet again. This time, you should be the real body, right?" Hearing this, Nick looked at Li Yi expressionlessly, and replied, "When you kill me, you will know if I am." "Really, since this is the case, then I can only ask you to die." After speaking, Li Yi's thoughts moved, and in an instant, a large number of ghost images began to diffuse in the passage. This time, Li Yi didn't summon the trolls and night bats. There was no way, the place was too small to use them at all. As the ghost appeared, the armed personnel of S.H.I.E.L.D. also rushed to Nick's side. Accompanied by the sound of intensive footsteps, the armed personnel blocked the end of the passage, putting the beam behind them. "Kill them," Nick ordered. Advertisement. After saying that, Li Yi over here smiled and waved, "Let him kill." Immediately, the ghost shadow formed a black tide and went straight to the armed personnel at the end of the passage. The armed personnel also opened fire quickly, and the tongues of flames continued to shoot, and everyone fired in the form of crossfire, completely sealing off the entrance of the passage. If you want to pass here, you must first pass their crossfire. If this is against ordinary people, then Nick will definitely win this battle. After all, they have superior firepower and terrain. No matter how many enemies there are, as long as they are blocked in the passage, they are a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. But are ghosts ordinary people? Obviously not. Seeing the enemy's fierce firepower blocking the way, the bodies of the ghosts behind them merged into the ground one after another, and they used the shadow shuttle to go straight to the end of the passage. Although the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. have fierce firepower, their bullets can only hit the ghosts in reality, and they can't hit the shadows entering the kingdom of shadows at all. For a while, they could only wipe out the ghosts on the bright side, while watching helplessly the shadows formed by the ghosts continuously spread towards them. After Nick saw this scene, without saying a word, he turned around and left with the extra armed personnel. He didn't even remind the armed men who were still fighting. Because, it is not necessary, someone must guard the exit, reminding them, who will guard. There are a total of 3 passages, honors, leading to the cell. As Nick left, he left some armed personnel at the intersection of each passage to slow down the speed of the ghost. And he himself left the passage quickly, preparing to call the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. to evacuate back. That's right, he's going to give up the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters straight away. They currently have no way to fight against Li Yi. When he saw Li Yi appearing in S.H.I.E.L.D., he already knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. was over, and it was only a matter of time before S.H.I.E.L.D. fell. Instead of dying in S.H.I.E.L.D., it's time to leave. As for the losses caused by this, Nick can no longer control so much. If other things are gone, it can be rebuilt, but if everyone dies, then there is really no hope at all. I have to say, Nick was decisive. But when he walked out of the passage and saw the figure of S.H.I.E.L.D. leaning against the railing at the entrance of the passage, looking down at the chaotic scene of S.H.I.E.L.D., he froze in place instantly. Chapter 74. Where's your cat? There is only one attitude, kill. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. You, why are you here? Nick turned his head and glanced at the passage behind him, then at Li Yi, who was not far in front of him, and said in disbelief. He clearly remembered that it was right that Li Yi was blocked inside. Hearing this, Li Yi, who was leaning on the guardrail, turned to look at Nick, with a smile on his face. Is it strange that I appear here? But you, when the guests arrive, you want to run away before you have a good chat. This is not what the host should do. You are also considered a guest. You are just a villain. If it weren't for your lack of ability, I would kill you right now. Being blocked, Nick's escape plan was completely aborted, and he knew he couldn't escape, so he cursed angrily. Hearing this, Li Yi shrugged indifferently, ignored his words, and instead looked at him carefully, After watching for a long time, Nick couldn't stand it. Li Yi finally said, "Where's your cat?" "What cat?" Nick frowned. Seeing this, Li Yi became more puzzled. "Are you really Nick Fury?" "You guess." Nick stared at Li Yi with a sneer on his face, not afraid of the imminent death at all. From the performance point of view, this appearance that is not afraid of death has a bit of Nick's bearing. But Li Yi still can't figure it out. Where's his cat? Moreover, looking at this guy, it seems that he doesn't even know what he said in 507. Li Yi couldn't help but feel suspicious. This guy is still a fake, right? But it's not right. The incident of raiding S.H.I.E.L.D. by myself can be said to be very sudden, and Nick has no reason to replace the substitute in advance. Or there is another possibility that even if Nick is in S.H.I.E.L.D., he is using promotion to do things instead of himself. It is impossible to think about it. The huge S.H.I.E.L.D., a highly confidential organization, does not know how many secrets it has to touch every day. Can a substitute do these things? If you can't figure it out, Li Yi doesn't understand it very much, but if you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. Shaking out the tangled thoughts in his mind, Li Yi waved his hand and said, "Kill him." After the words fell, behind Nick, a black shadow appeared quietly, and blade flashed across the air. Advertisement. Hearing the movement, Nick didn't wait to die. He quickly leaned down, drew his gun, and killed the ghost behind him with one shot. Looking at his agile movements and professional posture for drawing a gun, it is obvious that he has also undergone professional training. In the end, the phantom who attacked was actually killed by Nick. Watching this scene, Li Yi couldn't help showing a hint of surprise on his face. EBDC. Can Nick fight back against Sombra? This is too, seems to be acceptable. In the movie, although Nick seldom does anything, it is not that he has never done it. As S.H.I.E.L.D. director, Nick naturally cannot be a guy who is powerless. Although Sombra is stronger than ordinary people, if a Sombra can kill Nick, that would be too contemptuous of him. Therefore, in order to show his respect, soon after, ghosts appeared around Li Yi, staring at Nick with scarlet eyes, and then killed him. Seeing many black shadows rushing towards him, the expression on Nick's face suddenly changed. At that moment, he retreated into the passage and shot the black shadows. I have to say that his marksmanship is very good. Although Sombra's speed is very fast, due to the narrow passage, there is less space for maneuvering, which limits the ghost's dodge, resulting in many ghosts being shot in the head by Nick. And just as Nick was fighting and retreating, a large number of armed men rushed up from both sides of the corridor outside the passage. Looking at Li Yi, who was blocking the entrance of the passage, everyone shot without saying a word. Da da da. Terrifying gunshots rang out, and countless bullets roared towards Li Yi. Although he heard the gunshots from both sides, Li Yi didn't even bother to look at them. The next moment, two trolls appeared on his left and right sides, like two big mountains. They blocked all the bullets rushing towards Li Yi. Afterwards, the two trolls began to walk towards both ends of the corridor, facing the armed personnel who came from reinforcements. When the battle started, the troll relied on its huge body to charge and kill among many armed personnel. Gunshots and screams rang out intertwined, but none of them could do anything to the troll. Just as the troll was charging through the crowd, a trace of impatience appeared on Li Yi's face at the end of the passage. "These guys, you have to compare yourself with others. Okay, let's see who has more people." While thinking, under Li Yi's feet, the shadow spread, and gradually the whole shield was enveloped and gone. When the shadow completely covered shield, a ghost, a troll, and a night bat stepped out of the shadow one after another, setting off a heinous killing. Whether it's SHIELD's armed personnel, scientific researchers, or agents, Sombra has only one attitude: kill. Suddenly, S.H.I.E.L.D., which was still actively preparing to resist, fell into chaos. ****. Advertisement. Just when Li Yi released a large number of black shadows and completely plunged the entire shield into a killing chaos, suddenly, a loud shout suddenly came from downstairs. Li Yi turned his head to look, and suddenly saw a shield roaring towards his face. When he found the shield was only an arm's length away from him. With this distance, there is not enough time to summon the shadow to resist. Helpless, Li Yi could only raise his hand and grab it lightly. When, with a crisp sound, the shield landed firmly in Li Yi's hands. Downstairs, Steve, who threw out the shield, saw this scene, and the anger on his face could not help but freeze for an instant. Li Yi was able to block his own shield. This feeling was the same as when Li Yi saw Nick kill Sombra just now. It was unbelievable. After all, Li Yi is best known for his immortal ability and the terror of controlling the Shadow Core. When it comes to his personal strength, I am afraid that no one thinks that Li Yi will have a strong strength. Therefore, when Li Yi caught Steve's shield and showed extraordinary strength, Steve was completely stunned. However, he was stunned, but Li Yi was not. Looking at Steve, who was stunned in place, Li Yi threw the shield back without thinking about it. Boom! A sound burst resounded in the air, and the shield rushed towards Steve at a speed more than twice as fast as before. When Steve realized it, he wanted to imitate Li Yi and raised his hand to grab the shield, but, bang! Steve's figure was directly knocked into the air by the shield and smashed into a pile of debris. How is this possible? If Steve was shocked just now, he is shocked now. Li Yi can catch the shield thrown by him with one hand, but he can't catch the shield thrown by Li Yi. In other words, Li Yi is better than him. Thinking of this result, Steve just felt outrageous. G open the door for outrageous home. Chapter 75. The heart of playing tactics is dirty, thin Tony, black gold armor. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Just when Steve couldn't help doubting his life, around him, black shadows emerged and surrounded him. Seeing this scene, Steve finally came back to his senses, looked at Li Yi and shouted, "You devil, dare you fight me?" Steve invited Zondao. He still couldn't accept the fact that Li Yi was stronger than him. Li Yi was already difficult to deal with, but in the end, his personal strength was still stronger than him. This was not a blow to him, and it made him feel desperate. If Li Yi's personal strength really surpassed him, then coupled with his immortal ability and ability to summon the Shadow Army at any time, wouldn't they have no hope of dealing with him at all? Unfortunately, facing Steve's invitation to fight, Li Yi sneered, not even interested in responding. "I am a summoner myself, going to fight Steve one-on-one like a reckless man. He is not out of his mind. Crush him for me." Li Yi waved his hand, and in an instant, the Shadow Core rushed towards Steve. Although Steve looked reconciled, but Li Yi didn't fight him, he had no choice but to vent his anger on the Shadow Core. But the Shadow Core is not human. They don't feel pain, they don't scream, they just fight constantly, fight again. Let Steve not enjoy the thrill of defeating the enemy at all. And just after Steve fell into siege, in the tunnel, Nick was finally decapitated by the ghost and cut off his head. Although he survived for dozens of seconds by virtue of his outstanding personal ability, there was still no miracle in the end. However, Li Yi, who killed Nick, is not very happy at the moment. Because, not only did not see the cat, but also did not see another thing. This made Li Yi a little confused whether he killed Nick or another of his doubles. It can only be said that the hearts of these tactics are dirty, and it is unpleasant to die. And when the Shadow Core was slaughtering in S.H.I.E.L.D. on the other side, in a laboratory of S.H.I.E.L.D. With sunken eye sockets, Tony, who was almost too thin to be out of shape, looked at the masterpiece in front of him, and a hearty smile appeared on his face. Man is a very strange creature, which is invisible in normal times, but under the urging of hatred and pressure, it can burst out with powerful potential. As for Tony, that was the case. In just over a month, he frantically improved his battlesuit, and finally he created this set of armor that he named Hunting, which was black and gold in color. It is very similar to the Mark 41 armor in the movie. The name Hunting is self-evident, and the most powerful thing about this armor is its destructive power, mobility, and destructive power, which are more than 10 times higher than Mark 1. The speed exceeds Mach 5 per hour, which is 1,700 meters per second. Advertisement 5 times the speed of sound. This speed is faster than ordinary cruise missiles. Tony had heard the screams and gunshots outside the laboratory a long time ago, but at that time, his research had come to an end, so he didn't have time to pay attention to it. Now, it's time. JARVIS, wear armor. Sir, given your current physical condition, I suggest you take a good rest first. Don't talk nonsense, put on armor, Tony insisted. Hearing this, JARVIS stopped talking, silently controlled the equipment, and Tony put on the suit. Soon, after putting on the battle armor, Tony looked at the closed laboratory door, raised his hand and fired a palm cannon. Boom! With a loud bang, the door of the laboratory made of high-strength alloy was blasted open a big hole, and the edges were slowly melting. Walking out of the laboratory, the propulsion system on the back of the hunting armor was turned on, and in an instant, Tony disappeared in place. When he reappeared, he had already arrived at the Hall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Looking around, there were black shadows killing wildly everywhere. Looking at this scene, inside the armor, Tony's eyes exploded with anger. Without a word of nonsense, he manipulated the armor and directly attacked the many black shadows. Bang 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 bang, accompanied by a series of sonic booms. Although Tony did not maximize the speed, he still easily exceeded the speed of sound, and then directly hit many black shadows with his battle armor. At that moment, many black shadows in the hall exploded almost simultaneously. Definitely, they didn't really explode at the same time, it just seemed like they exploded at the same time because of Tony's speed. Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D., who was struggling to persevere, was stunned when they saw this scene, and they didn't react at all. It wasn't until someone saw Tony stop that they realized that Tony had saved them. Director Nick. Where are they? Yes, over there. Asking for flowers. A member of S.H.I.E.L.D. pointed in the direction of the depths of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hearing this, Tony's voice disappeared in an instant, and everyone present only felt a blur before seeing Tony's figure again. Advertisement. So fast, someone murmured, and others looked at S.H.I.E.L.D. in a daze. They were already on the verge of despair, but now they couldn't help but have a glimmer of hope in their hearts. Maybe this time, S.H.I.E.L.D. can still be saved. And at the moment when Tony killed a large number of black shadows, Li Yi also felt the death of the black shadows. In his induction, although the black shadows died one after another, the time between deaths was too short, and it was not much different from dying at the same time. Did S.H.I.E.L.D. use some kind of weapon of mass destruction? As soon as this idea came to mind, Li Yi threw it out of his mind. He is not deaf. If any WMD erupts, he will definitely be able to hear it. In my mind, this idea just fell. Boom! A loud bang suddenly rang in his ears, piercing Li Yi's ears with pain. What? Li Yi turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. There was nothing there, and then turned back. A series of collision sounds came, and many black shadows that had besieged Steve died instantly. Seeing this, Li Yi's pupils couldn't help shrinking, and then fixed his gaze on the black gold armor beside Steve. Tony? Li Yi asked in confusion. After the words fell, the mask of the hunting armor opened, revealing the skinny Tony. Seeing his appearance, Li Yi was slightly startled, and almost thought that Tony had taken drugs. Otherwise, it's been a long time since I saw you, and I'll be thin and out of shape. On the other hand, although Steve beside Tony was also surprised by Tony's image, he wasn't surprised at all. Although he has been training, he also knows Tony's situation. After Potts died, he stayed in the laboratory for 24 hours, slept for an hour or two when he was sleepy, and drank energy liquid to replenish energy when he was hungry. After suffering like this for more than a month, it's no wonder that my body doesn't collapse. Why kill Potts? Ignoring Li Yi's words, Wang Ni looked at GFA with cold eyes and asked. He forgot to eat and sleep for so long, just wanted to ask Li Yi face to face, and then beat him to pieces. The question is it possible to mount? Chapter 76. Do I need a reason to kill someone? Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Tony's icy voice echoed in Li Yi's ears. Seeing his expression of wanting to tear himself apart, the corners of Li Yi's mouth suddenly lifted up. I kill people. Do I need a reason? When the words fell, Tony's fists clenched instantly. He thought that his heart was completely dead, but now he found that when facing Li Yi, he would still be angry and lose control. Since this is the case, let's get rid of him completely. Immortal. He wants to see how many times Li Yi can die. That's right, he still doesn't believe that Li Yi can be reborn infinitely, because it's unscientific. Everyone has a barrier of knowledge and vision, which is deeply rooted in the soul, and it is not so easy to break. And Tony's cognitive barrier is science. For him, everything can be explained by science. What can't be explained is not that the science is wrong, but that he doesn't know enough about 400. If this is the case, then kill Li Yi a few more times, he won't believe it, and can't find a flaw in Li Yi's immortality. In a sense, his thinking is correct. However, he ignored a question: can he really kill Ji Yi? Rip them apart. Li Yi put away the smile on his face, and thousands of black shadows began to come out of the shadows, rushing towards Tony and the two. Watching this scene, Tony put down his mask, and his whole body was once again shrouded in the hunting armor. Afterwards, he ignored all the shadows, swayed his figure, and ran directly towards Li Yi. Although a large number of black shadows blocked Li Yi at the same time, it was useless. In front of Tony's terrifying speed, the black shadow core had no time to do anything, and was smashed alive by Tony. In the past, Li Yi used the shadow core to drag everyone into the quagmire of the battle forcibly, dragging them down alive, but now, it is completely unworkable. There is no way, the speed gap is too big, the shadow core can't even catch Tony's speed, so naturally there is no way to intercept it. Bang bang bang. Accompanied by a burst of explosions, Tony successfully eliminated all the shadow core blocking the way, and punched Li Yi. The powerful kinetic energy endowed Tony with an unparalleled impact force. Even if the power of the hunting armor was not strong enough, with the blessing of kinetic energy, the impact force still surpassed the troll's explosive power. Boom. There was a loud noise. Without any accident, Li Yi was directly knocked into a cloud of blood mist. Not far away, Steve watched this scene, and his face instantly showed excitement. Advertisement: since Li Yi appeared, all shield actions against Li Yi basically ended with Li Yi crushing shield. But this time, Tony came back with the battle armor he had painstakingly developed, instantly killed Li Yi, and turned the situation around. This is the first time they have the upper hand when facing Li Yi. How can Steve not be excited at this moment? Tony, well done. Steve shook his fist excitedly. The excitement on his face was beyond words. However, compared to the excited Steve, Tony at the moment is obviously calm. Although he killed Li Yi in an instant, if he couldn't break the secret of Li Yi's immortality, no matter how many times he killed him, it would be a waste of effort. Therefore, in his opinion, it is too early to be happy now, and it will not be too late to be happy when he finds out Li Yi's secret and solves him thoroughly. With this in mind, Tony locked all the shadowy corners with his eyes, waiting for Li Yi's resurrection. He didn't make him wait too long, and soon, the hunting armor locked onto a shadow. Looking at the black mist churning in the shadow, Tony ordered decisively. JARVIS, scan, analyze, those substances around Li Yi. Okay, sir, the scan has started. Sorry, scan failed. Almost instantly, the voice of JARVIS had already sounded, which made Tony frown. Although he didn't expect to find out the secret of Li Yi in one go, it must have failed too quickly. What was the reason for the failure? Tony asked. Suddenly, in the armor, the voice of JARVIS sounded. The black mist is a special kind of energy. That kind of energy does not exist on this planet. All the elements that humans have discovered so far do not exist in the black mist. Therefore, this is a brand new and special energy zone. The voice of JARVIS sounded without any emotion, and Tony understood immediately after hearing it. The black mist produced when Li Yi was resurrected does not exist in this world. A kind of thing that does not exist naturally cannot be scanned. Is there any way to analyze those black mist? Samples need to be captured, sent to a professional laboratory for specific analysis. Advertisement: catch a sample. Okay, I see. Tony nodded. Isn't it just to capture samples? Just kill Li Yi a few more times. Thinking silently in his heart, soon, the hunting armor locked on Li Yi's newly resurrected figure again. Then Tony bumped into it again, wanting to repeat the process just now, directly hitting Li Yi to death. And the moment he moved, Ji Yi, who had just been resurrected, also moved. He can accept his own death, but he cannot accept being tortured and killed. Hearing the sonic boom coming from his ears, Li Yi's eyes flickered with coldness, and he suddenly shouted in his heart, "Ghost fog." In an instant, a large amount of black mist spread out centered on Li Yi, completely covering his figure. Then, Li Yi used the shadowing ability, and his figure instantly turned into a cloud of shadows and disappeared in place. When he disappeared, Tony's figure quickly passed by where he was just now. But the impact feeling that Tony imagined did not emerge, his impact fell. At the same time, within his line of sight, a burst of red characters also began to flicker. Failed to capture the target, unable to lock the target. Looking at this scene, Tony couldn't help frowning. He thought that Li Yi might have other means, but he didn't expect that Li Yi cut off his lock so quickly. For a while, Tony 5.2 couldn't borrow the battle armor to directly target Li Yi, so he could only rely on his vigilance to search slowly in the black mist. And just as he was looking around, behind him, Li Yi's figure quietly emerged, and then swept away towards Tony with whip legs. Hearing the movement behind him, Tony reacted quickly, turned around in an instant, quickly opened the distance, and charged the cannon in his palm, blasting directly behind him. Boom! A terrifying shockwave exploded from Tony's palm, tearing the air behind him. But what Tony couldn't accept was that there was no one behind him. Not only that, but in the next second, a huge amount of force directly landed on his head, kicking him to the ground on the spot. Boom! Tony in his battle armor hit the ground hard. A wave of disbelief rose in Tony's heart. How could Li Yi be so fast? Chapter 77. Shadow Shuttle. Can you still escape? Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Clapping his hands, Tony quickly jumped up from the ground. Looking at Li Yi, who was slowly retracting his right leg not far away, Tony's eyes were full of vigilance and said, "How is it possible? How can your speed be faster than mine?" It is difficult for him to accept this fact. His current speed can reach 1,700 meters per second. Even if Li Yi is unusual, it shouldn't be faster than him. Listening to Tony's question, Li Yi didn't answer his question, stepped back, and quickly disappeared into the black mist. Seeing this, Tony quickly became vigilant, paying attention to the movement around him. Soon, another burst of tearing air sounds came from behind him. Tony turned around again to distance himself, but he still didn't notice Ji. Thinking of what happened just now, this time he didn't even think about it, and directly threw his elbow behind him. Boom! The air was torn apart in an instant, but he didn't touch anything, and his elbow smashed directly into the air. Huh? No? Tony was puzzled, and subconsciously turned his head back, but the moment he turned his head, he saw a fist the size of a sandbag zoomed in rapidly in his sight, then it hit him on the head. Although he was wearing this battle armor, a strong impact still knocked him down to the ground in an instant. Fact. How is it possible? Tony gradually became irritable. He spent countless efforts to build this speeding armor, but he only killed Li Yi once, as if Li Yi had found a flaw, and was being targeted crazily, which made him really unacceptable. However, he misunderstood this point. Li Yi didn't find a weakness of his armor, but in terms of speed, the speed of Tony's hunting armor was dozens of blocks in seconds. But Li also has cheats. The black mist makes it easier for him to travel through the Shadow Kingdom, and the Shadowed ability allows him to enter and exit the Shadow Kingdom. And the Kingdom of Shadows is connected to every corner. As long as there is a shadow, the Kingdom of Shadows can be opened in that place. This is equivalent to the fact that Li Yi is now directly equipped with a teleportation device, and he can go from one place to another with a thought. Although Tony's speed is fast, it still takes a little time after all, and Li Yi doesn't need it. As long as he wants, he can appear in any range covered by the Black Search. Advertisement therefore, no matter how fast Tony is, it is useless against Li Yi who can teleport. Tony didn't know about these twists and turns, and Li Yi wouldn't explain them to him. Relying on his teleportation-like cheating ability, Tony was beaten half to death by Li Yi soon, and even had a psychological shadow. The battle armor on his body has now become pitted, full of scars from Li Yi's punches or feet. Frustrated, so frustrating. Tony stared fixedly at Li Yi who disappeared into the black mist again. He thought that with his latest masterpiece, he would definitely be able to kill the world, but unexpectedly, he was still hanged and beaten by Li Yi. For a moment, the slight contempt that had surfaced in Tony's heart because of the instant killing of Li Yi disappeared completely at this moment, and at the same time, Tony also took a deep breath at this moment and said, "Sure enough, you have more methods than I imagined, but I'm not unprepared. This time, even if I die, I will drag you with me." Tony spoke viciously, with harsh words, and in the next second, a wave of energy light suddenly appeared on his chest. As the light waves became brighter and brighter, a terrifying aura emanated from Tony. Seeing this scene, Li Yi, who was hiding in the darkness, couldn't help but raise his brows, and thought to himself, what does this guy want? This idea popped up in his mind, and before Li Yi could figure out what was going on, suddenly, the light waves in front of Tony had climbed to the limit. Then, a terrifying and extreme force was suddenly released from Tony's chest. Rumble. Huge amounts of sound emerged, and in an instant, everything that stood in front of Tony was melted by the energy light waves on his chest. That terrifying power made Li Yi unforgettable at a glance. And this is just the beginning. After the light wave was launched, Tony controlled the armor and began to turn around quickly, and the light waves that were released continuously swept across the surroundings following Tony's movements. Boom. 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 There were loud explosions, and inside S.H.I.E.L.D., almost all the equipment was cleaned and turned into a mess of scattered parts. As for the Black Shadow Corps, they were directly surrounded by the battle group, and they all disappeared as a black shadow. Advertisement in the black mist around Tony was forcibly dispelled under the impact of this terrifying energy wave. Li Yi, who was hiding in the black mist, also failed to escape the impact of the light wave, and was hit directly. In an instant, Li Yi's body directly vaporized. When the black mist was forcibly dispelled, the energy light waves on Tony's chest finally dissipated. In the battle armor, Tony saw that the energy reserve had dropped below 40%, and he couldn't help but have a gloomy look on his face. The power of the energy light wave is great, but also, the consumption is not small. In order to disperse the black mist and solve the situation of being passively beaten, he directly consumed more than half of the energy. If he can't completely eliminate Li Yi with the only remaining energy, then he will be the one who will be in danger next. But, can he solve Li Yi with the remaining energy? When the experiment is successful, he can pat his chest and say yes, even if Li Yi is immortal. If he kills Li Yi 100 times and 1,000 times, he doesn't believe that there is no effect at all 663. But now, he no longer has the confidence he had just now. It took so much energy to kill Li Yi only once, maybe just once again, but compared to his intended goal, the difference is too far, too far. According to Li Yi's state, even though he died 3 or 5 times, it didn't affect him at all. Therefore, even if the battle is not over, Tony already has a premonition that he might lose again today. Run away, Tony asked inwardly. Although there is nothing Li Yi can do, relying on his own armor, he can escape. There should be a chance, right? But one after another failed. Tony's confidence was also hit hard. People's self-confidence comes from the accumulation of victories. Only victories over and over again can make people more confident and calm. On the contrary, if one experiences constant failures again and again, that person will become unconfident, even inferior. Now Tony is in this state. He who was always full of confidence faced Li Yi. He began to hesitate and even doubt himself. If I run away, will I still have the courage to face Li Yi next time? Just when Tony was deep in thought, not far away, Steve got up from the ground lying on the ground, looked at Tony who was stunned, and couldn't help shouting, "Hey, Tony, why are you in a daze?" Chapter 78 Special Mission. Recruit Generals. Nick really got the lunchbox. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Steve's voice pulled Tony out of his self-doubt, and looking at Steve, Tony asked his inner question. I feel like I'm going to fail again this time. What should I do, Captain? If you fail, then it's good to fail. It's not something to be ashamed of. Steve smiled reassuringly. He could already see that something was wrong with Tony's mood. But the repeated failures have made me doubt myself. I'm afraid that if I escape this time, I won't have the courage to face that guy next time. Haha, Tony, what bullshit are you talking about? You're a genius, a well-deserved genius. How can you lose confidence because of a few failures? That guy is indeed weird and powerful, but so what? As long as we are still alive, we have a chance to completely eliminate him. Maybe we are in the dark now, but as long as we persevere, believe me, the darkness will eventually dissipate when dawn comes. Don't give up. Steve encouraged Tony, and it wasn't just his casual reassurance, but he really thought so. Just like how thin he was at the beginning, but because of his persistence, he finally waited until the dawn, didn't he? I understand the captain, let's go, and the guy hasn't been resurrected yet. Tony nodded and said, he just looked around and found no trace of Li Yi, so Li Yi should have died again in his attack just now. Okay, let's evacuate. By the way, remember to bring the guy in the detention room with you. Listening to Tony's words, Steve didn't hesitate, and then made a special reminder to bring Banner. After all, he knew Banner's strength. If Banner could really control his own power as Nick said, then undoubtedly a powerful helper. As for the crimes that Banner committed before, at this moment, Tiff also decided to ignore it for the time being. Li Yi's metamorphosis forced him to let go of his previous principles and unite more powerful people. Soon, Tony quickly brought Banner out of the detention room by relying on his own speed, and took away Nick's body in an instant, and then they left S.H.I.E.L.D. After they left completely, in the darkness, Li Yi was resurrected again and walked out from the shadows. Looking at the empty shield, Li Yi's eyebrows lowered slightly. Run away. Advertisement, this time, it's really embarrassing. After saying something to himself, a cold light flashed in Li Yi's eyes. This time he raided S.H.I.E.L.D. He originally wanted to wipe out Nick and his party, but the variable Tony completely disrupted his plan. In just 1 month, Tony has developed such a powerful armor, which he never expected. Even if he hadn't been able to achieve teleportation through the Shadow Kingdom, he might have been tortured and killed by Tony again and again this time. Li Yi, who was originally not very eager to improve his personal strength, finally felt a sense of urgency in his heart at this moment. In addition, he felt a little dissatisfaction with the strength of the Shadow Core at this moment. In the past, the Black Shadow Core was always disadvantaged, but as strong players continued to emerge, the Black Shadow Core showed more and more powerlessness. This time, Tony only relied on the battle armor he developed to defeat the Black Shadow Core. If a more powerful enemy appeared in the future, wouldn't the Black Shadow Core really become a display? Thinking of this, Ge couldn't help thinking of strengthening the Shadow Core. Just when this idea just appeared in his mind, suddenly, a long-lost electronic synthesis sound slowly sounded in his mind. Open black lens bracket ding. Special mission. Recruiting generals close black lens bracket task content. You can designate the person you need to revive from the opponents you killed, and promote him to the general of the Shadow Core. According to the number of Shadow Core you have, currently, you can resurrect 3 generals. Close black lens bracket. Resurrection conditions. Take control of a city belonging to the Shadow Kingdom, and you can resurrect a general. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Current resurrectable personnel. Spider-Man, Green Goblin, 2nd generation Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Natasha Romanoff, Potts, Hawkeye, City. Note. With a corps led by a general, the strength will be improved. Close black lens bracket. Seeing the task that suddenly appeared in front of him, Li Yi couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and then quickly browsed the content of the task. After reading the task content, Li Yi was stunned. Even if he was killed, he would never have imagined that the opponent he had killed in the past would become a candidate for the general of the Shadow Corps. In addition, when he noticed that Nick was on the resurrection list, the expression on his face became even weirder. Where's his cat? Where's surprise? Where's Nick's henchman? Advertisement nothing showed up, so Nick really got the box lunch? No matter how you look at this matter, how weird it is, Li Yi always feels that something is wrong, but he can't tell, so he can only temporarily give up thinking about it. No matter what is wrong, I will know it sooner or later. Now, it's time to harvest. Slowly exhaling a foul breath from his mouth, Li Yi's thoughts moved, and in an instant, a black shadow quickly emerged from the shadows. Go, find me everything in this place. Li Yi ordered, with a look of anticipation in his eyes. He didn't know about other good things in S.H.I.E.L.D., but if nothing else happened, Tesseract should be in S.H.I.E.L.D. Li Yi didn't know how to use this thing, but this didn't prevent him from putting it away first. Soon, with the efforts of the Shadow Corps, a lot of debris appeared in front of Li Yi. All kinds of firearms, documents, equipment, machines, and even unfinished hamburger sandwiches have been pressed into pie shapes. If ordinary people collect, it is natural to pick up important things to collect. After all, searching for items in a ruin is a lot of difficulty. But for the Shadow Corps, it doesn't matter whether the ruins are ruins or not. Using their own characteristics, the bricks and stones in the ruins can't stop them at all. For a moment, the Shadow Corps was like light and industrious bees, constantly, how good, going to and from the ruins, piling up various items in front of Li Yi. Li Yi was not idle either, constantly searching for the things brought by the ghosts, putting away the valuable ones, and throwing the worthless ones aside. After working for almost an hour, suddenly, a ghost walked out holding a box in both hands. There is a cube sealed in the box, flashing with waves of energy. Seeing this, Li Yi narrowed his eyes. This should be the space gem. Deposited in the Shadow Kingdom. Without picking up that thing, Li Yi directly ordered to Ghost Shadow. That thing, he can't use it now, he will form a team later and then slowly develop it. After receiving the order, the ghost holding the box turned around and sank to the ground. After getting the Tesseract, Li Yi lost interest in continuing to collect, and immediately signaled Sombra to evacuate. He himself also turned into a black mist and disappeared in place in an instant. Chapter 79. Within 10 days, I must make the final decision on this girl appointment. Open black lens bracket, subscribe, close black lens bracket. The Empire State Building, and soon, Li Yi's figure reappeared in Jin Bing's office. Looking at the empty office, Li Yi sat down on the office chair directly, and at the same time contacted Jin Bing in his heart. Accepting the devil tattoo, Jin Bing is now equal to his dependents. As long as he wants, he can pass information through the connection between each other, but Li Yi rarely did this in the past. I'm in the office, come see me. Li Yi's voice sounded in Jin Bing's mind, and when he heard Li Yi's voice suddenly, Jin Bing couldn't help being stunned for a moment. After that, without further ado, he immediately put down what he was doing and rushed towards the calendar office. 10 minutes later, the door of the office was pushed open, and Jin Bing's burly body appeared outside the door. Sir, you were looking for me. Come, sit, Li Yi greeted, and then Jin Bing went directly to sit opposite Li Yi. Sir, what's the matter in such a hurry to find me? Jin Bing said with a trace of doubt on his face. Li Yi rarely looked for him in the past, and even if he did, he was notified, and it was the first time that he spoke directly in his mind like now. No big deal, just to ask you, don't you want to control the beautiful and sharp underground world? How is the current situation? Hearing this, Jin looked at Li Yi suspiciously, not knowing why he was suddenly interested in this matter. However, he, who was already loyal to Li Yi, would not ask this question, but directly reported the current situation. Sir, at the current position, I have annexed about 1/3 of the power and territory of the 3 major gangs in Niu. I believe that after a while, I will be able to swallow half of their power. Speaking of this, a rare smile appeared on Jin Bing's face. 1/3 of the power and territory of the 3 major gangs together accounted for almost half of Jin Bing's power in New York. Power and territory have increased by half in such a short period of time, which is naturally a happy event for Jin Bing, who is keen on power. But listening to his results, Li Yi, who was sitting opposite him, shook his head in dissatisfaction. Too slow. What? Jin Bing was stunned. This speed is still slow? Advertisement, 10 days. I'll give you 10 days to completely unify Niu's underground world. Is there a problem? Li Yi said in a deep voice, and almost jumped up from the chair in fright. Just kidding, in 10 days, directly annexing the remaining territory of the 3 major gangs, there is almost no other way than going to war directly. He now thought that he had occupied too much territory, causing Meilojian to keep thinking of ways to deal with him. Going to war directly at this juncture, isn't it the reason to send a shot to Meilojian? Thinking of this, Jin Bing couldn't help but said, Sir, 10 days is too short, even if it is the fastest, it will take 1 month. Only in this way, I can try not to cause official backlash. No, you only have 10 days. As for the official backlash, don't worry about it. If it's really not possible, you can send the ghost out directly. Besides, when you master Niu's underground world, even if the authorities don't do it, I will do it. Huh, sir, what do you mean? Jin Bing was startled. How could he feel that Li Yi seemed to be going to do something crazy? Looking at his expression, Li Yi could see what was going on in his heart in an instant, and the corner of his mouth could not help but turn up slightly. That's right, it's exactly what you think. I plan to let you completely replace the official. What do you think? Sample. Li Yi said with a smile on his face. His tone was full of temptation. Jin Bing's scalp was numb, and his whole body couldn't help trembling. Not scared, but excited. As the king of the underground world, there is nothing in the world that Jin does not dare to do. It's just that he was thinking about how high the probability of success in this matter was. After all, it's not a joke to fight against the official. Thinking of this, Jin couldn't help but make sure. Sir, what you said, CBCC, is true. Do you really plan to take the girl's appointment? That's right. Li Yi gave an affirmative answer. He naturally didn't have this idea before, but if he wanted to revive the general, he had to let the Shadow Court control a city. What is control? It is naturally the final say. Even if Jin Bing takes over Niuyu's underground world, will it count if Niuyu says it herself? Naturally impossible, because there is a beautiful tip on it. Advertisement therefore, if you want to occupy Niuyu, Meilajian must step down and make way for herself. If there is no conflict of interest, Li Yi can still ignore them, but since he needs a girl date, they have to give way. As he said, no one can change this decision. As for whether this will lead to Ancient One, Li Yi now has a brand new idea on this issue. As for whether it is correct or not, more information is needed to be sure. In short, ignore Ancient One for the time being, not to mention that he may not appear. Even if he does appear, at worst, just touch him to see whether his magic is powerful, or his own immortality is better. Having figured out what Li Yi was thinking, on the other side, Jin Bing also took a deep breath and stood up. Sir, I understand. Don't worry, tomorrow, I will definitely take down Niuyu's underground forces. Jin also vowed to guarantee this. He didn't want to cause an official backlash before, so he boiled the frog in warm water and waited slowly. But now, Li Yi is about to turn against the authorities, so he doesn't need to care about the official's backlash. When the time comes, he will directly summon the ghosts and completely ignite the power of the three major gangs in New York. Okay, then I will wait and see. I hope you can bring me good news tomorrow. No problem, Jin said loudly. After talking about this matter, Ji Yi talked about another important thing. As Dr. Reed invited, hearing this, Jin Bing's expression froze, and he shook his head. No, he directly rejected my invitation. I sent someone to forcefully invite me later, but was blocked by the official people. In addition, there is a guy next to him, very weird, how should I put it, he seems to be a transcendent, but he doesn't seem to be. Afterwards, I sent people over several times, and even sent people to arrest him at night, but they always met that guy. Then, my men ran back by themselves, which is very weird. What's that man's name? Li Yi raised his brows and said curiously. I checked, that guy seems to be called Victor, okay? Okay, I know about this matter, don't worry about it for now, I'll meet him personally later. Li Yi said. A person's information emerged in his mind. It should not be that guy. If it was really him, Jin Bing's people would not be able to come back alive. Li Yi was talking to himself, his tone full of uncertainty. Chapter 80 Chaos. The Gold and the army attacked and killed. The shadows are raging. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Niuyue, the mafia resident. During this time, the three major gangs and Jin Bing fought endlessly, resulting in a lot more guards in their resident than before. At the same time, the top leaders of their forces have also stayed in the station during this period of time, constantly fighting wits and courage with Jin Bing. Originally, they thought that such days would continue for a while, but a phone call made the top mafia leaders change their colors instantly. Mr. Joel, it's not good. Jin is crazy. Joel, the person in charge of the Italian mafia in Niuyue, heard the blunt voice on the phone. Joel's expression changed slightly, and he asked, "What's going on? Make it clear." Hearing this, the person on the other end of the phone quickly sorted out his language and said, "Just now, the forces under Jin Bing's command made a big move and began to invade all the territories under our jurisdiction." What, this guy, is he really crazy? How is the battle going? No, Mr. Joel, not only did he fail to defend, but also, all the senior leaders of other gangs have lost contact. Now, only you can still get in touch. F*K. How is this possible? Joel couldn't help but let out an exclamation. It's true, and now those guys in Ireland have been completely defeated, and besides. The person on the other end of the phone hadn't finished speaking completely when suddenly, his voice fell silent. Joel here called several times, but the phone kept busy, obviously something happened. Realizing this, Joel hung up the phone immediately and was about to call others. However, before he could take full action, suddenly, a saber light flashed behind him, and then his head shot up into the sky instantly. Blood spilled all over the room. The last high-ranking member of the three major gangs died. Niu made an appointment with the general administration, and Mer's brows were completely entangled when he heard the news from his subordinates. F*K. F*K. Is Kim crazy? He actually fought directly in the urban area. What does he want to do? He doesn't care about our Public Security Bureau. And Mir was very angry. In the past, Jin Bin and the Public Security Bureau maintained a tacit understanding, that is, they would not directly fight in the urban area, so as to save face for the Public Security Bureau. The Public Security Bureau will also deal with Jin Bing's subordinates as appropriate. But now, in order to wipe out the influence of the three major gangs in New York, Jin Bin directly violated this hidden rule and launched a large-scale war in the urban area of Niuyue. Advertisement for a while, the phone number of the Public Security Bureau was about to explode. Director, it's not good, Wall Street, someone is fighting on Wall Street. Suddenly, a security officer rushed in anxiously, shouting. Hearing this, Mur's eyes instantly widened. Wall Street, where's that? The financial street of Niue, a place of wealth known all over the world. Where is not only the gathering place of the upper class, but also the place where the capitalists are entrenched. In America, what is the most powerful? Capitalists. If you control the capital, then you are a beautiful and sharp god. Now, Jin Bing's people are actually working on Wall Street. Is he crazy? For a while, Chi Mur's breathing became rapid, and the people around him were frightened and quickly gathered around. Director, are you alright? Get out of here. After cursing angrily, he drove away the people around him, and only then did Mir catch his breath. Why are you still standing still? It's not clean. Send me other people to suppress it. Bring back all those guys who fought on Wall Street. I'm going to kill them alive. Jameer growled, but as his voice fell, the people around him didn't move. This made Chi Meyer anxious. B*********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Director, we have no manpower now, and all the manpower has been dispatched. Someone smiled wryly. Hearing this, Murr's face paused, and then he sat down in his seat with a slumped face. Crazy, really crazy. Go and notify the military, and let the military enter the city to clean up the mess. There's that fellow Jin Bing, tell the military, this time, they will be wiped out as well. Chi Meyer gritted his teeth and said earnestly, although the above has already issued an order to attack Jin Bin. Advertisement it can be said that what he attacked was Jin Bin's peripheral industries, and he did not move Jin Bin's core industries at all. Just in order not to completely anger Jin Bing. Good guy, he is here to protect him, but Jin Bin is constantly adding fuel to his fire. I really think he is just a show as the bureau chief. Understood the director, I will inform you immediately. Asking for flowers. After receiving the order, a security officer quickly sat down, took down the phone, and dialed the number of the military. And after the military got the news, there was no hesitation, and it was wrong to mobilize at the first time, and entered the urban area. However, it is on the only way for the military to enter the city. Jin took this car and parked on the side of the road. Looking at the oncoming military vehicles and the heavily armed military soldiers on board, Jin Bin slowly pushed the door of the vehicle and came to the middle of the road, blocking the road leading to the city. He had long expected that the people from the Public Security Bureau would be unable to deal with the chaos in the city and would definitely mobilize people from the military to enter the city, so he had been waiting here for a long time. People, the military is on a mission, get out of the way quickly. Seeing Jin Bin blocking the road, the military vehicle stopped, and then a soldier poked his head out of the window to warn. Jin Bin naturally turned a deaf ear to the military's warning. He closed his eyes and opened his hands, and then shadows quickly enveloped the military vehicles. Seeing this scene, everyone in the military was stunned for a moment, and then subconsciously felt a little familiar. Soon, when someone reacted, a burst of exclamation resounded all around. It's the devil in black, shoot, shoot, a soldier shouted in horror. As soldiers stationed in New York, the first thing they do when they wake up every day is to watch the battle where Li Yi massacred tens of thousands of troops, let them remember the characteristics and methods of Sombra, and enhance their awareness of prevention. Therefore, after Jin Bin called out the Shadow Corps, the military personnel recognized it immediately. For a moment, everyone in the military was in chaos, and then, without waiting for the commander to give an order, a gunshot rang out suddenly, shooting toward the shadows on the ground. But before the black shadow came out, they couldn't hit at all, and finally the bullet hit the ground, wasting nothing. Just after they finished firing the first shell magazine, finally, in the shadows, the ghost figure emerged, staring at the soldiers with scarlet eyes, and jumped up one after another in the next second, rushing towards the soldiers. The light of the knife was in midair flashing, screams sounded. Soon, many soldiers fell directly under Ghosting's knife. No matter how they fought back, the result was in vain. In the end, under the order of the commander, the soldiers who had not had time to enter the city quickly began to retreat for a day. Chapter 81 New York Riots. Into the City Hall. Don't dare to disobey. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Niuyue, the capital of the world in the past, is now completely in chaos. Since Li Yi issued the order to control Niuyue to Jinhe, he no longer stayed behind, mobilized all his subordinates, and constantly provoked various attacks from the outside world. Several gangs headed by him, all gangs members scuffle everywhere. People from the Public Security Bureau were fighting fires everywhere, but due to limited manpower, there were not enough people from the Public Security Bureau to suppress the turmoil in Niuyue City. The people and vehicles sent here are still on the road. They may have been delayed by the scuffle on the road, and they couldn't even reach their destination. Or, just after they were dispatched, they received news that there was a more serious melee in another place. It can be said that the people from the Public Security Bureau are either on the way to stop the violence, or they are on the way to stop the violence. Even some people who are not gang members are also infected by this atmosphere. Unknowingly, they also join in this kind of riot carnival. And taking advantage of this chaotic time, a large number of gangsters took to the streets one after another and began to burn, smash, loot, and loot. Ordinary civilians were scared and hid in their rooms, not daring to go out. Those who had guns at home were all loaded, nervously watching what happened outside. But as the chaos continued, I don't know if it was the gang or the thugs who had become swordsmen, they were not only satisfied with attacking the shops, they began to target the houses. And because that's not messy enough, Jin Bin's request is to make the whole of New York completely messed up. And only girls who are messed up can usher in a real flushing and shuffling. In a certain residential building, 3 members of the gang directly violently broke the door and broke in. Soon, men's roars, women's screams, and gunshots rang out from time to time in the room. It didn't take long, and the whole girl was like a battlefield, with sirens, screams and cries everywhere. Without the repression of the authorities, crimes began to appear in the sun. In Washington, the White House, when the beautiful head of state heard the news of the turmoil in Niue, the whole person was stunned. 873. What? Is today April Fool's Day? Can any of you tell me what the hell happened, or that I haven't woken up yet? The head of state looked at the director of the CIA and asked in astonishment. Hearing this, the director of the CIA looked serious. This is not a joke, the law and order in Niue is completely out of control now. Where are those bastards in the military? Where's the sheriff? Where's the FBI? What are they doing? Are these shit-eating guys just watching like this? The heads of state widened their eyes, and began to roll their names one by one. These are all beautiful and sharp violent organizations, responsible for handling a series of violent incidents. Hearing this, the director of the CIA shrugged helplessly. Sorry, they may not be free. According to the investigation, this girl dating riot is related to that crazy Asian, and a guy named Jin Bing is also involved. The two of them joined forces, and it's hard to settle down in a short period of time just based on the situation of the girl's appointment. Currently, people from the Public Security Bureau and the FBI are busy dealing with the marriage, and have no time to control the order in the Women's Convention. It's the same with the military. The military sent an army into the city before, but they were intercepted and killed halfway. The military suffered heavy losses, so they had no choice but to retreat to the barracks. It was the method of that Asian, his black man clothes devil, the army can't rush through. The head of state stared at the boss of the CIA, his eyes seemed calm, but he was like a wild wolf, and said coldly. So, now, our people have no ability to control girls at all. Is this what you mean? That's right. The director of the CIA sighed and said helplessly. After listening, the face of the beautiful head of state also instantly became dignified. Niue is the economic pillar of Malaysian. There must be no accidents. Send an order to mobilize troops from other places and go to Niue as soon as possible to suppress all turmoil. Any problems can happen if Niue goes 10 times. The head of Malaysian ordered. Hearing this, the CIA chief nodded, and then he said with a hint of hesitation on his face. Then, what should I do with that Asian? This turmoil is suspected to have been provoked by him, and if he is not dealt with, the turmoil will be hard to calm down. Where's Nick Fury? Get shield out, bellowed the beautiful head. As soon as this remark came out, the CIA director said helplessly, Mr. Yuan, there is something I forgot to tell you. Just a few hours ago, SHIELD was attacked by that Asian. At present, the SHIELD headquarters is completely destroyed. Director Nick Fury he is missing and appears to be dead. So, SHIELD is now disabled, and it doesn't have the ability to deal with that Asian. He knew that SHIELD was one of the Führer's hopes, but he had to break the Führer's expectations. What? The Magian head of state suddenly stood up from the office chair, with shock written all over his face, and then an indescribable anger welled up in his heart. F*K, an Asian, made us suffer, damn it, the director of the CIA said with a wry smile. Mr. Yuan, now is not the time to vent. Niue is in a critical situation. If you delay for a minute, many more people will die. Let's wait until later to talk about useless things. Hearing this, the expression on the beautiful head's face froze, and then he took a deep breath to forcefully suppress the anger in his heart. Okay, I see. The beautiful head of state pondered for a moment, then said harshly, since SHIELD has no ability, then let the military take over. This time, they are approved to use all weapons of mass destruction except nuclear bombs. I will bear all the consequences. Well, head of state, do you want to think about it? The use of weapons of mass destruction in Japan may have a great international impact. Isn't the current international influence not small? Niue is about to change hands, now, why do you care so much? Okay, I understand, then I'll go down first, advertisement. The CIA chief nodded, and the beautifully pointed head of state waved. Soon, the director of the CIA left the White House and passed on the order of the head of state. In an instant, several military regions closest to Niue received a message from the director of the CIA. Afterwards, a large number of heavily armed soldiers began to move out, rushing to Niue. Li Yi was completely unaware of all this. He was standing in Jin Bing's office at the moment, looking at the chaotic scene downstairs, frowning slightly. Although Niue is not his right now, in his opinion, it is already in his pocket. But now, a group of thugs are running rampant on their own territory, which makes Li Yi very unhappy, like a few wild dogs mixed with a wolf pack. At that moment, Li Yi's thoughts moved, and then a large number of black figures appeared behind him. You patrol the whole Niue on my behalf, and I will kill all the guys who take advantage of the fire to rob. After the words fell, the shadow core did not reply, and its figure directly merged into the ground and disappeared into the office. Soon, in the big and small streets of Niue, a ghost, troll, and night bat came out of the shadows, set foot on the streets of Niue, and began to suppress the unrest. Times Square. This is the most chaotic place in Niue City at the moment. Because there are thousands of large and small shopping malls and convenience stores here, it has become the first target of those thugs. At this moment, looking around, in every shopping mall, there are big thugs who are frantically doing zero no-buy shopping. The scene was extremely chaotic, with screams and wailing mixed together. At this moment, a ghost appeared in Times Square, and then, looking at the thugs who robbed, without saying a word, they drew their knives and slashed. Pissed. Accompanied by the sound of falling into the flesh, a thug was hacked to death with a single knife. Seeing this, the people around showed angry expressions on their faces. Fake. Who are you B*****************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************D. Someone called out, which immediately aroused the response of countless people. They were all members of the riots, and if Ghost Shadow killed a rioter, he was provoking them, so they naturally refused to let it go. Although the Ghost Shadow looks weird, so what, they have completely released their animal nature, they don't care about the Ghost Shadow's appearance at all, they just want to tear the guy who stopped them from rioting. Immediately, a large number of thugs rushed up towards the ghost. They really looked like a group of wild dogs that had been robbed of their food bowls. And just as they were rushing towards the Ghost Shadows, at this moment, a large number of Ghost Shadows also began to emerge around them one after another. Each of them drew their knives without saying a word, as if what they saw were not people, but Chinese cabbages. In an instant, the thugs and the Shadow Corps collided fiercely, and the result was obvious. In an instant, there was a scream. Although the thugs are full of courage, they are just ordinary people after all. Even if some thugs had guns in their hands, they were still ordinary people. Their strength and courage obviously did not match, and they were instantly dismissed by the Emperor. Then it can be seen that the ghosts stabbed one by one, setting off a frenzied killing among the crowd. The giant shadows even slapped a lot of them, flying with one slap, and fell down with 1 foot. Many thugs were cut off from their hands and feet, and their brains were blown out. As the killing continued, the thugs were soon overwhelmed. F***K. Stop, we won't rob. Someone started begging for mercy. This kind of one-sided massacre, even if you can, you have to be terrified. It's a pity that Ghost Shadow doesn't accept prisoners. The order they received was to kill all the guys who burned, killed and looted. They didn't care what they thought. Soon, a knife flashed, and the mob who begged for mercy was directly killed by an owl. Run, these guys are devils. As the killing continued, finally, someone's mentality completely collapsed, and after a loud roar, he quickly turned around and fled. With the first guy taking the lead, the rest of the people reacted and started to turn around and run away. However, if you want to escape, you have to ask the ghosts if they agree. Facing the fleeing thugs, the ghosts quickly chased after them without any hesitation. Their speed was much faster than ordinary people. Although those thugs put all their energy into feeding, they still couldn't escape the ghosts' pursuit. Soon, with the continuous screams, the thugs who had caused chaos before all fell down on the street. In the surrounding buildings, ordinary civilians who didn't make trouble looked at the bloody scene on the street, and they couldn't help covering their mouths in fright. There is no joy after being saved. No way, Sombra killed too many people. There were still 20,000 to 30,000 thugs who caused chaos in Times Square, but now, they're all dead. The whole street was full of corpses, and the strong smell of blood filled Times Square, making people discolored by the smell. Looking at such a scene, the civilians hiding in the building were afraid that those men in black on the street would directly break into their hiding places and kill them as well. Fortunately, their worries did not arise. After solving all the thugs in Times Square, the ghosts sank to the ground one after another, disappeared in place, and rushed to other places. Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, all places have traces of the Shadow Corps, and with their appearance, the thugs in Niuiwan were all killed. Advertisement. And with the crazy killing of the Black Shadow Corps, the three major gangs who originally fought to seize the territory and the people of Jinbing couldn't help but stop fighting. They didn't know that the Shadow Corps only killed those who caused chaos. From their perspective, anyone who caused violence was killed. Under such circumstances, they still have the guts to continue fighting. When Li Yi got the news, he was also a little helpless. Well, he frightened his own people. However, it doesn't matter. Now that the Shadow Corps has completely suppressed the scene, it's time to close the net. Soon, downstairs of the Empire State Building, a line of convoys stopped at the door and stood beside the army waiting. As Li Yi walked out of the building, the crowd headed by Jin Bing lowered their heads respectfully. Afterwards, Jin Bin personally opened the door and sent Li Yi to sit in the back seat, while he himself sat in the cab and acted as the driver for Li Yi. Let's go to City Hall. Good sir. Jin Bin nodded, then picked up the walkie-talkie in the car and spoke for a while. Soon, the car started slowly and headed towards the City Hall. At the moment, in the City Hall, the mayor of Niuyue City, the police inspector and other high-level officials were all gathered in the meeting room. And right in front of the meeting room, there is a big screen, and the screen is showing the picture of the rioters before the killing of the Shadow Corps. Everyone, what do you think? After the screen was played, Niu asked the mayor of the city, looking at all the high-level officials present, and asked. Before, the law and order in Niuyue was out of control, and none of them could do anything. At the critical moment, the Shadow Corps appeared and suppressed all violence with bloody means. This made them startled, but also a little puzzled. After all, they were all people who had been exposed to Li Yi's information. It is clear that the Shadow Corps is under Li Yi's command. Will Li Yi be so kind as to help them suppress the turmoil? Not to mention, this turmoil was originally caused by Li Yi's Jin Bin. Therefore, everyone gathered together to judge Li Yi's intentions. The mayor saw that after his voice fell, no one at the scene answered. He frowned and began to roll his name. Superintendent, what do you think of this matter? The thoughtful policeman heard this, looked up at the mayor, and said solemnly together, I think we may be in danger. Huh? Why do you say that? The mayor was puzzled, and others also turned their attention to the superintendent. The source of this turmoil, you all know, is that it was caused by Kim, who took refuge in that Asian. It stands to reason that this movement should be what he wants to see. But now, he is taking action to suppress the turmoil. What does this mean? Speaking of this, the superintendent looked at everyone. Everyone frowned 4.4 and pondered for a while. Then someone suddenly said, washing white. That's right, he's whitewashing the demons in black under his command. Then, why do you want to wash white? The superintendent asked again, but this time no one gave an answer. Seeing this, the superintendent immediately asked himself and answered, I think he should have let his shadow corps begin to walk in the sun. That's why he wants to clean up his crimes and erase the public's fearful impression of those demons in black. When a person hiding in the dark wants to walk in the sun, what do you think he wants to do most? The superintendent looked at the crowd and said in a deep voice. Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed instantly. They were not fools. When the superintendent spoke to this point, they finally realized it. Li Yi intends to rule the city, so it is necessary to cleanse the black-clothed demons under his command, so as to prevent the low-level civilians from resisting the rule because they are afraid of the black-clothed demons. Realizing this, the conference room suddenly became noisy. F*K. That B******************. D. He can't do this. This is our city. What right does he have to rule? Yes, we firmly oppose it. Everyone spoke angrily, and listening to everyone's words, the superintendent shook his head bitterly. What if we oppose it? Can you fight against him? As soon as these words came out, everyone in the conference room breathed instantly. SHIELD was wiped out, the military was so beaten that they dared not enter the city, and now only the FBI and the Public Security Bureau are under their control. Can they rely on them to deal with Li Yi? Everyone no longer had such naive illusions. For a while, the atmosphere in the meeting room became extremely depressing. At this moment, the door of the meeting room was suddenly pushed open, and the captain of the security department of the city hall rushed in with a look of panic. Mayor, it's not good, a black-clothed demon broke in. After the words fell, the faces of everyone in the conference room changed drastically. Chapter 82. This will be my first city in the Shadow Kingdom. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. At the gate of the city hall, Jin Bing opened the car door respectfully, and Li Yi got out of the car. Then, a group of strong men in suits quickly surrounded the two of them. At the same time, a ghost figure appeared in front of Li Yi. On both sides of the road, help Li Yi clear the way. Immediately, a group of people walked towards the city hall mightily. Before today, Sombra's reputation was only spread among the upper echelons of Malegian, but after today, the entire Malegian was full of people discussing Sombra. On the internet, the topic about Sombra has already been maxed out. Therefore, when the security at the gate of the city hall saw the black figure, everyone's expressions changed instantly, and they didn't even dare to step forward to stop them, just watching Li Yi and his group walk into the city hall. I randomly found a staff member of the city hall and found out where the mayor was. Afterwards, Li Yi and the others walked directly to the conference room on the 3rd floor. When they came to the door of the meeting room, they just saw the mayor and others coming out of the meeting room. The mayor and others who got the news and wanted to evacuate did not expect to bump into Li Yi and his party as soon as they went out. Immediately, the mayor and his party were all stunned. But Li Yi kept walking towards the mayor. You're the mayor of Neo City. It's me. The mayor said with a forced smile on his face. Okay, it just so happens that you are all here, let's come in and have a chat together. Li Yi spoke in a flat tone, then passed the mayor directly and walked towards the meeting room. Many high-level people standing behind the mayor, watching and approaching Li Yi, their complexions changed one after another, and then they all quickly lowered their heads and got out of the way. Soon, Li Yi and Jin entered the meeting room, and the other people they brought stood guard at the door. The ghost shadow directly occupied every corner of the corridor, staring at the mayor and his party with scarlet lights people. Watched by the ghost, the mayor and the others felt a chill in their hearts, and immediately gave up their plan to escape by taking the opportunity, and turn around and return to the conference room honestly. After they entered the door, Li Yi was already sitting on the headguard of the conference room, and Jin Bin stood behind Li Yi like an iron tower as a background wall. Mr. Li Yi, I don't know if you are here today, what's the matter? It's nothing serious, I just want you to hand over the position of mayor to me. Without a word of nonsense, Li Yi directly stated the purpose of this trip. The mayor of Niuyue City, who was still thinking about how to stabilize Li Yi, immediately changed his expression to 21 when he heard this. Not only him, but the expressions of everyone else also changed. The police inspector had already analyzed Li Yi's purpose before, but it is one thing to analyze it, and another thing to say it out of Li Yi himself. Suppressing the anger rising in his heart, the mayor of Niuyue City said with a forced smile on his face. Mr. Li Yi, I'm afraid this is a bit inappropriate. You are not our beautiful and talented person, so you are not qualified to be mayor. When did I say that I'm going to be the beautiful mayor? Li Yi wondered. The mayor's face froze, obviously realizing something, and Li Yi's next words also verified his guess. From today on, Niuyue, it has nothing to do with Malegian. From now on, this will be my first city in the Shadow Kingdom. What? Li Yi's voice fell, and everyone lost their voices instantly. He was trying to split Magian, and for a moment, everyone completely forgot their fear of Li Yi, and roared angrily. Fake, don't even think about it. You be *****************. Yes, we will never let you succeed. Everyone looked at Li Yi and cursed angrily, but Li Yi didn't speak, just looked at them coldly. Soon, the office became quiet again. After regaining their sanity, the high-level executives couldn't help but turn pale when they realized what they had just done. Have you finished speaking? If you finish speaking, you can go to die. Drag it, kill it. Li Yi waved his hand. He didn't come here to listen to these guys' nonsense. He wanted to give them a chance to surrender and help him deal with things. But since they don't cherish it, they should all die. Anyway, the most indispensable thing in this world is talent. No, you can't, I'm the mayor of New York City. The mayor groaned and struggled, and the other senior executives did the same. Unfortunately, all their struggles were in vain. When Li Yi made a decision, their outcome was already doomed. Soon, all the senior executives of Niuyue were dragged outside the City Hall building and shot dead on the spot. The other staff members in the City Hall looked at this scene with expressions of horror on their faces. Their mayor, the highest official of Niuyue City, was killed just like that? This incident had a great impact on everyone, and many people even sat down on the ground in fright, unable to get up for a long time. Having dealt with all the high-level officials in Niuyue City, Li Yi rushed to the gold without looking back and said, "From now on, you will be the deputy mayor, and Niuyue will be taken care of by you, don't let me down." "Understood, sir." Jin Bing's eyes flashed with excitement, and he said with a loud voice. The deputy mayor of Niuyue City, this is a position that he never dared to think about before. Even though he was very majestic before, he could only hide in the darkness after all. Now it is different. Now, he has completely left the darkness, stood in the light, and has become an existence under one person and above 10,000 people. Even if Li Yi's current behavior looks dangerous, he is even walking a tightrope. But he has no fear. If he wants to climb to the top, he needs to take risks. Everything depends on whether the final harvest is worth it. After arranging Jin Bing's position, Li Yi waved Jin Bing away, and then opened the system panel impatiently. After he solved a group of high-level officials in New York City, the system has recognized his dominance in this kind of city, that is to say, he can now revive a general. Advertisement, special mission, recruiting generals. Task content. You can designate the person you need to resurrect from the opponents you killed, and promote him to the general of the Shadow Corps. According to the number of Shadow Corps you have, currently, you can resurrect 3 generals. Close black lens bracket. Resurrection conditions. Take control of a city belonging to the Shadow Kingdom, and you can resurrect a general. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Current resurrectable personnel. Spider-Man, Green Goblin, 2nd generation Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Natasha Romanoff, Potts, Hawkeye, Nick. Close black lens bracket. Note. With a corps led by a general, the strength will be improved. Close black lens bracket. You already have a chance of revival. Please choose the target you need to revive. Close black lens bracket. Looking at the system prompt, Li Yi's eyes immediately fell on the list of resurrectable personnel. Without too much hesitation, Li Yi quickly locked on the target, Resurrection, Spider-Man. The target is confirmed, and the resurrection begins. Close black lens bracket. After the system's voice fell, suddenly, a black mist began to fill in front of Li Yi. Looking at the black mist, Li Yi couldn't help showing a hint of curiosity in his eyes. It was the first time for him to resurrect someone other than himself, and he was very curious about what the resurrected Spider-Man would be like. Will you keep the memories of your life? While Li Yi was thinking silently, in the Kingdom of Shadows, in the dark abyss, dense figures sank in the dark abyss. If Li Yi is here, he will find that the figures who sink here are basically the people who were killed by him. The human trafficker who once warehoused Curry and slaughtered him like a pig. Kay Linton Sheriff's Chief, Spider-Man, Green Goblin, Harry, Dr. Octopus, Natasha Romanoff, etc. All the people killed by him are counted in this dark abyss. Suddenly, a dark force acted on Spider-Man, awakening the sinking Spider-Man. Do you want to live? Do you want to see the light again? Hearing this, Spider-Man, whose consciousness gradually became clear, replied without any hesitation, I think. Then embrace the darkness, and you will see the light again. A vague idea sounded in Spider-Man's mind. This is not the voice of a certain creature, but the will of the Shadow Kingdom, or Li Yi's will. After the words fell, the Spider-Man in the dark abyss had a tangled look on his face, but he could feel the fear of his body being gradually swallowed by the darkness, and the fear of complete annihilation, which defeated the persistence in his heart. Immediately, the darkness completely covered him, and his figure disappeared into the dark abyss, leaving others to continue to sink. Outside, the black mist in front of Li Yi began to dissipate, and gradually, a Spider-Man dressed in black appeared in front of Li Yi. Looking at the Spider-Man in front of him who was possessed by venom, Li Yi's eyes lit up. Before he could speak, the revived Spider-Man knelt down on one knee in front of him. See, Master. Get up. Li Yi waved his hand, then couldn't help asking curiously, do you still remember how you died? When you fight against the Master, you will be killed by the Master. Oh, you don't blame me? It is my honor to be killed by the Master? Spider-Man, or Dark Spider-Man, said in a frantic tone. Hearing this, Li Yi laughed. He likes the current Spider-Man. Very well, welcome back, Ghost General. In Washington, the office of the head of the White House, the CIA director hurriedly pushed the door and walked in. Looking at the CIA director who entered the door, the head of state helplessly held his forehead. Man, I hope it's a good wish you brought me. There is indeed good news, but there is also bad news. Which would you like to hear first, Führer? Good news. Enough bad news lately. Well, the good news is that the girly chaos has subsided. Huh? So fast? the reinforcements shouldn't have arrived at Niu Yue, have they? The head of state looked puzzled, and the CIA chief nodded. It's true, but the chaos in Niu Yue has indeed subsided. Well, anyway, this is really good news. Now you can have bad news. The bad news is that Neo has fallen. Huh, what do you mean? The Führer frowned. Literally, according to my information, that Asian killed the mayor of Niu Yue City, took control of Niu Yue, and announced that starting today, Niu Yue will leave the beautiful point sequence and belong to the Shadow Kingdom he created. F*K. F*K. That B********D. How dare he? The head of state widened his eyes, raised his hand to sweep away all the items on the desk, and then cursed angrily. Seeing the excitement of the head of state, the CIA chief couldn't help comforting him. Don't be angry, our troops are already on their way to Niu Yue, and we will arrive in 2 hours at most. At that time, we may be able to regain the girl's appointment. Advertisement. How is it possible that damn B******************* D is so difficult to deal with? Although I have great confidence in our young man, that B*********** D is not a normal person at all. The head of state said a little dejectedly, he has all the information on Li Yi here, so he is very aware of Li Yi's strength. As long as Li Yi doesn't want to, the most he can do is ruin the date. Hearing this, the director of the CIA also looked silent. Why didn't he know what the head of state said? But they do now. There was no way to take Li Yi, and for a while, he didn't know what to say. In this way, after a long silence, the head of state suddenly said, if this operation fails again, then I will only have to activate that thing. Hearing this, the CIA chief was startled. He naturally knew what the head of state was talking about. The ultimate weapon of mankind is enough to make the world peaceful. What about Niu Yue? Besides, even if it is the ultimate weapon, it may not be able to completely kill that Asian. The CIA chief raised doubts. In this regard, the Magian head of state waved his hand. I know that thing may not be able to kill that guy, but how will you know if you don't try it? Besides, if Niu Yue can't take it back, it will be completely destroyed, and I will never leave it to that guy. Well, I hope you guys are strong enough. The CIA chief prayed silently. On the other side, on the road about 10 kilometers away from Niu Yue, a long line of tanks is slowly marching towards Niu Yue. Behind the tank troops, 100,000 beautiful soldiers are sitting in the troop carrier. Follow the team to New York. And the commander of this team, Lieutenant General Nar, is sitting on a military jeep at the moment, closing his eyes and resting his mind. Suddenly, the radio in his car rang. The operator quickly said, General, Beigong's secret telegram. Read. Lieutenant General Nar didn't even open his eyes and spoke directly. Niu Yue fell and was seized by Asian Li Yi. Beigong ordered 160 US to recover Niu Yue within 3 days. As soon as the words came out, Nar opened his eyes instantly, and the operator's tone trembled accordingly. Damn it, how could Niu Yue fall? Nar muttered in disbelief. When the other people in the car heard this, they all kept silent and didn't dare to speak at all. And they couldn't believe it, just like Nar, that Niu Yue had fallen. However, as a military general, Nar has experienced many battles. Even though his heart was shaken, he quickly calmed down, and then he began to order. Send the order, and the troops will set up on the spot. Battalion, dispatched drones, and made an appointment to survey the situation. Yes. The operator responded, and then quickly passed on Nar's order. Immediately, the long dragon, which was slowly heading towards Niu Yue, stopped directly at a place about 10 kilometers away from Niu Yue. At the same time, drones, under the control of everyone in the military, quickly flew towards Niu Yue and began to survey the situation in Niu Yue. But at the moment, the bustling Niu Yue in the past has become extremely deserted at this moment. The previous riots had caused great harm to Niu Yue, making the people afraid to go out at all. Definitely, in addition to this reason, there is another very important reason. At the moment, on every street in New York City, a huge troll is walking around on the street. Loitering, patrolling. When the drone came over New York City, it immediately saw empty city streets and trolls patrolling the streets. Soon, the footage captured by the drone appeared in Nar's command room 10 kilometers away. In the command room at this moment, besides Nar, there are more than a dozen junior generals and more than 20 staff officers. Everyone, you have all seen the situation now. Let's talk about it. How should we subdue Niu Yue? Nar scanned the crowd and heard that, among the crowd, a staff officer raised his hand and said, General, who are those guys in the picture? Hearing this, Nar was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that you are not stationed near Niu Yue, and he doesn't know the Shadow Corps. Come here, distribute the information. You should take a look at the information first. After finishing speaking, Nar asked people to distribute the information from Beigong to everyone, and at the same time explained. This time, the guy who snatched the girl's appointment is called Li Yi, and he is of Asian descent. And those big black guys you see are the summons of this Asian. These summons are very dangerous, and, like that Li Yi is suspected of being immortal. Speaking of this, Nar's mouth twitched involuntarily. It was not the first time he knew this news, but when the news came out of his mouth, he felt helpless. Undead army, undead people, how can he fight this? The same is true for the others at the moment. After hearing Nar's words, they were stunned. Immortal? How does this work? They have never dealt with such an opponent. Seeing that everyone was staring at him blankly, Nar coughed lightly. Don't think so much, just treat them as normal opponents. Hearing this, everyone nodded and continued to read the information, but it was obvious that they were all a little absent-minded at the moment. Chapter 83 Ghost General. The Resurrected Little Spider-Man, open black lens bracket subscribe close black lens bracket. Li Yi's difficulty has obviously exceeded everyone's expectations. After discussing for more than an hour, Nar and others still failed to come up with an effective plan. While everyone in the military was having a headache about how to deal with Li Yi, on the other side, Li Yi had also received the news that the military troops had arrived outside Niuyue City. The news came from Jin Bin. Jin Bin's sphere of influence spreads all over Malegian. Although the military's actions are very careful this time, in this highly information-developed society, no matter how careful they are, they will inevitably be exposed. What's more, counting the journey and the time spent outside Niuyue City, almost 3 or 4 hours have passed since everyone in the military received the order to go to Niuyue. After such a long time, it is naturally not difficult for Jin Bing to receive news. After getting the news, Jin didn't dare to delay, and immediately came to Li Yi's office, and informed Li Yi of the news that the general had arrived outside the City of Women's appointment. Upon hearing the news, Li Yi was not too surprised. This time, he directly occupied Niuyue. Before he killed a few people, Malegian's reaction was great. Not to mention, he now directly occupied Niuyao, Malegian and even the economic center of the world. In this case, if Malegian didn't move at all, then he would be really surprised. Sir, do you want me to gather the members under my command and start preparing? The office of the mayor of Niuyao City has now become Li Yi's office. Li Yi is sitting on the office chair with his legs crossed, while Jin Bing is standing opposite him, asking a little. Hearing this, Li Yi simply waved his hand, no need. After Li Yi finished speaking, he clapped his hands neatly, and suddenly a figure behind him quietly appeared. Looking at this scene, Jin Bing's pupils shrank slightly, and a hint of shock flashed in his eyes. As Spider-Man's old opponent, how could he not know what Spider-Man looks like? But isn't Spider-Man dead? Why did it suddenly appear here? For a moment, Jin looked at Li Yi with puzzled eyes. Seeing the shocked look in Jin Bing's eyes, Li Yi suddenly smiled. This is what he wanted. Little Spider-Man, have you heard what Jin Bin said? Those people outside the city will be handed over to you. Li Yi said with a calm face. As his voice fell, a smile appeared on Spider-Man's face. Although Jin couldn't see it, he could clearly feel that Spider-Man was indeed smiling. Don't worry, Master, I will definitely not let you down. After speaking, Spider-Man's figure sank into the ground immediately, and disappeared directly into the office. After Spider-Man disappeared, Jin Bin couldn't hold back his patient curiosity anymore, and couldn't help asking, Sir, what's going on? Shouldn't he be dead? Jin Bing looked at Li Yi with doubts in his eyes, wanting to figure out what's going on. After all, the meaning of the appearance of Spider-Man is too special. Although he knew that Li Yi was immortal, he never knew that Li Yi could bring other people back to life. If this ability can be used on a large scale, it also means that he may also have hope in the future, resurrected from death, and no longer fear the pain of life and death. Advertisement thinking of this, Jin Bing's breathing became short again, and Li Yi's gaze, which was looking at Li Yi, was full of fiery color. It's a pity that when facing Jin Bing's question, Li Yi just smiled mysteriously and didn't answer the doubts in his heart. As a superior, keeping secrets to his subordinates properly can greatly consolidate his rule. Naturally, Li Yi doesn't need this method to consolidate his position, but he won't tell Jin Bin everything either. Okay, no need to guess, you will know when it is critical. I want to find a way to transfer the pictures outside the city. I want to see how those people in the military die with my own eyes. Li Yi brought the topic back on track. Jin Bin was taken aback for a moment, nodded randomly, and turned to leave Li Yi's office. Although he was a little disappointed that he didn't know the answer, knowing that Li Yi could resurrect other people, Jin Bing's work efficiency immediately improved a lot. Soon, under Jin Bin's arrangement, a large number of drones began to fly out of the city. The drones connected to the signal of Li Yi's office, so all the situation outside Zhongcheng was broadcast. Just when Jin Bin had arranged everything, outside the city, where the military was stationed, the figure of Spider-Man emerged quietly. Looking at the military camp occupying a radius of several kilometers, Spider-Man excitedly said to himself, I will use you to announce my coming. After finishing speaking, Spider-Man raised his hands, and a deep call sounded slowly from his mouth. Soldier from the darkness, heed my call and wake up. After Spider-Man's voice fell, a large black shadow suddenly appeared under his feet, spreading crazily in all directions. The last pair of scarlet eyes emerged on the ground, and the body slowly rose from the ground. 100, 1,000, 10,000 countless ghosts rose from the ground, and the strong black aura rose into the air with the appearance of the ghosts, gradually covering the sunlight in the midair. And the movement caused by the appearance of ghosts, of course, could not be concealed from the many American soldiers in the military camp not far away, and they all let out exclamations of surprise as they watched the rising black mist. Look, what is that? The soldiers shouted frantically, with astonishment and bewilderment written all over their faces. And when all of them were stunned in place, the ghost figure in the distance had rushed towards the military camp under the command of Spider-Man. Whoosh, 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 waves of tearing air sounds kept ringing, and with the blessing of the general, the strength of the ghost shadows was significantly enhanced, the most obvious being their speed. Although the speed of the ghosts was not slow in the past, ordinary people could still catch their figures as long as they observed carefully, but now, the speed of the ghosts has completely surpassed the vision of ordinary people, causing the soldiers in the military camp to I can only see bursts of black shadows advancing wildly, but I can't figure out what it is exactly. But although they can't see clearly, they are not stupid. The strange appearance of the ghost figure clearly showed that the visitor was not good, and bursts of loud shouts rang out in the military camp. Enemy attack, prepare to fight. The military commanders shouted crazily and began to gather everyone to resist. Under their orders, the soldiers moved quickly, put their equipment on their bodies one after another, and then opened their formations, preparing to meet the enemy. Time passed slowly, and the speed of the ghosts was getting faster and faster, without leaving too much time for the military to prepare, and soon they came to the camp. Looking at the approaching black shadows, the military commanders with nervous faces all ordered to open their mouths. Fire. Advertisement. As the voice fell, there was an instant terrifying gunshots, and a metal storm formed by countless bullets shot towards the shadow frantically. The bullets tore through the air and rushed towards the ghosts. If it had been done before, many ghosts would have been torn apart by the metal storm. But that was before. The appearance of Spider-Man greatly enhanced the strength of the ghost shadow group. Although bullets could still cause them damage, but with a reaction speed that surpassed that of the human eye, they were killed before the bullets approached them. They dodged with ghostly speed. Soon, many soldiers discovered this scene. All the bullets they fired hit the open space. Such a scene made their expressions change drastically. Fark, how is this possible? Oh my God, are you kidding me? Many soldiers exclaimed one after another. They could hardly believe what they saw. The firearms they used to rely on, now they can't even hit people. Is a gun that can't hit a person still a killing tool? They can't even compare to a fire stick. Realizing this, everyone in the military turned extremely ugly, but unfortunately there was no time for them to correct their mistakes at this moment, and the ghost shadow group finally rushed to the camp. Bang! Bang! There was a crazy collision sound, and many ghosts of the ghost shadow group directly tore apart the defensive front of the military soldiers by their impact. Then, holding Katana's ghost in their hands, they began to fight with their knives. One after another of snow-white blades streaked across the air, and screams sounded in the military camp. Under the extreme speed of the ghost shadow gate, more than 1,000 people died in the hands of the ghost shadow group in just one face-to-face effort. Chaos and blood filled the entire military camp. The soldiers resisted angrily, but what was ushered in was an even more tragic massacre. They don't know what's going on. Why such a enemy suddenly appeared? At this moment they can only tremble under the ghostly blade. At the camp headquarters, many high-level military officials are still discussing how to deal with Li Yi in the city. Suddenly bursts of tragic noise came from the outside world. Nar frowned instantly. Go out and see what's going on. Following his words, a guard immediately walked out of the command post. When he saw the scene outside, he was completely stunned. Then he ran back to the headquarters as if he had gone crazy, looked at Nar and said in a trembling tone, "General, the enemy attack system." The guard shouted loudly, and Nar's face changed instantly. How is that possible? He couldn't believe what the guard said, and then he got up and walked out of the command room. Leaving the tent, he immediately saw the fighting in the distance. Because the military camp is very large, although the sound of the fighting was fierce, it was still more than a kilometer away. Looking at the chaos and fighting in the distance, Nar's face suddenly changed suddenly. Damn it, it's those demons in black, they raided the camp. As soon as these words came out, the faces of many military generals who followed him out of the headquarters changed one after another. Is that the devil in black? Looking at the scene of war in the distance, the faces of many military generals became extremely ugly. Chapter 84. I am Peter Parker, the former New US citizen and good neighbor, and now the ghost general. Open black lens bracket, subscribe, close black lens bracket. They still heard about the black-clothed devil from Nar, and they had never been in contact with it before, and they didn't even have the concept of black-clothed devil in their minds. Although Nar has been emphasizing that the strength of the black-clothed demon is terrifying, but as the saying goes, they can't imagine the horror of the black-clothed demon without seeing it with their own eyes. But now they saw that the modern elite soldiers under their command were slaughtered like dogs in the face of black-clothed demons, and the firearms in their hands seemed to be burning sticks, which not only did not play the slightest role, but even delayed their escape. What will the general do now? Someone looked at Nar and couldn't help asking. Hearing this, Nar couldn't help taking a deep breath, and then slowly said, "Order the artillery to launch a covering bombardment on that area." As soon as these words came out, the faces of all the people present changed one after another. "General, no, there are still a lot of our soldiers there." "Then what can you do?" Nar turned his head and looked at the crowd with ferocious eyes. After listening to his words, everyone was speechless. At present, the soldiers and the ghosts have been completely entangled together, and the strength of the ghosts is obviously far from what the soldiers can match. Even if the soldiers hold guns in their hands, they are still no match for the ghosts. In this case, the normal attack has completely lost its effect, and the speed of the ghost shadow is too fast. Only the cover-type bombing can contain the ghost shadow's impact on the barracks. Many of them can see this. However, once the covering bombardment is carried out, it means that the soldiers who are entangled with ghosts are completely abandoned. It was difficult for so many generals to accept for a while, but they had no other way. For a while, the atmosphere at the scene couldn't help but become stalemate, and in the end it was Nar who took the initiative to speak and broke the stalemate. "Since you 457 have nothing to do, then do as I say." "Understood, General." Everyone nodded helplessly, and then began to issue orders. Under their orders, the armored troops and artillery began to aim their guns at the chaotic camp. A minute later, bursts of violent roars suddenly sounded over the camp, and then shells roared and fell towards the chaotic camp. Boom! 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 Terrible shelling sounded throughout the camp, and in the chaotic camp where the ghosts were entangled, bursts of fire and explosions suddenly came to mind, directly devouring everything in the camp. Whether it was the ghost, or the soldiers who were slaughtered by the ghost, they were all submerged under the artillery fire at this moment. Covered by artillery fire for a full 5 minutes, the chaotic camp has completely turned into a sea of flames. Nar's people looked at the chaotic camp engulfed by the sea of flames, with complicated and unspeakable expressions in their eyes. If there were other options, Nar would not want to use such extreme means, but the reality is that there are no other options. The only thing that comforted him was that the black-clothed demons that filled the film kings completely disappeared under the cover of artillery fire. And just as they were staring at the chaotic camp engulfed in flames, they were in a daze. Advertisement outside the battlefield. Spider-Man looked at the group of ghosts submerged by artillery fire, and the corners of his mouth under the mask could not help but slightly raise. It's so cruel that you even kill your own people. If that's the case, let's see how many you can kill. Spider-Man said something to himself, and then he raised his hands, and a large black shadow spread from under his feet again. CBDA, soon, the ghost group that had just disappeared reappeared, and they all looked at Spider-Man with scarlet eyes. Faced with the gazes of many ghosts, Spider-Man said passionately, "Go, soldiers of the Shadow Kingdom, spread the glory of the Lord, show off the power of the Lord, and crush these guys for me." Spider-Man's voice continued to echo, and with his order, the revived ghosts rushed to other camps again. Soon the same story as before was staged again. With super speed, the ghost rushed directly into the camp without the soldiers being able to react, and then started killing again. Seeing the killing resumed, Spider-Man smiled with satisfaction, and then disappeared in place immediately and began to search in the camp. Shoot a man first, shoot a horse, capture a thief first, capture the king. Although there is no such proverb in America, there is such a saying. So Spider-Man will directly take down the commander of this army. Without the command of the leader, these soldiers are like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, and they no longer have the slightest power to resist. Spider-Man searched quickly, commanding the gate of the camp. Nar and the others looked at the battle that started again around them, and their expressions became extremely ugly. At the same time, a trace of fear began to emerge in their eyes. At this moment, they finally remembered that the scariest thing about the black-clothed demons was not their combat power, but their immortality. Facing a powerful opponent, they still have the confidence to fight to the end, but facing a group of immortal rascals, they suddenly don't know how to deal with it. At present, many generals can only look at Nar again. "General, are you still bombing?" someone asked in a complicated tone, and Nar almost cursed when he heard this. Although he didn't see the reaction of the soldiers below, he knew that the bombing just now had already left dissatisfaction in the soldiers' hearts. Shred them in one step. For a while, Nar couldn't help becoming silent, his eyes filled with helplessness. Just when he didn't know what to do, suddenly, a chuckle came from behind them. "I found you, so you were here." Hearing the movement, Nar and others immediately turned their heads to look behind them, and suddenly saw the Spider-Man in black. The moment they saw Spider-Man, Nar and his team were stunned for a moment, and then a staff officer suddenly thought of something, and his face became excited. "Spider-Man, you are Spider-Man, you are here to help us." Hearing the excited words of this staff officer, the others also reacted one after another. When Spider-Man was alive, he was a good resident of Neo-citizens and had huge amounts of fame and prestige throughout America. Obviously the staff officer recognized his identity, so he showed that excited expression. But Spider-Man looked at that scene, and his face couldn't help but become weird. He really didn't expect that someone would ask him for help. For a moment, a sense of absurdity emerged in Spider-Man's heart, and he couldn't help but let out a weird laugh. Advertisement hearing Spider-Man's laughter, the expressions on the faces of the others changed slightly, and they recognized the irony in Spider-Man's laughter. Only the staff officer was still talking excitedly, wanting Spider-Man to save them. "I'm glad you can trust me so much, but it's a pity that I'm going to live up to your trust. Let me introduce myself. I'm Peter Parker. I used to be a nice neighbor to the townspeople, and now I'm the Ghost General." After finishing speaking, Spider-Man suddenly raised his hand, and then a cobweb shot out from his wrist in an instant, stuck to the bodies of several generals, and yanked hard. Afterwards, the figures of several generals flew directly towards Spider-Man, and were finally knocked unconscious by Spider-Man one by one. Seeing this scene, Nar's expression suddenly changed, and he quickly shouted, "Kill him, kill him." As his words fell, the guards beside him rushed towards Spider-Man one after another, but these guys had difficulty facing ghosts, so how could they be Spider-Man's opponents? I saw Spider-Man's figure flashing suddenly, and before several guards even had time to fire their guns, he had already broken their necks. After finishing all this, Spider-Man looked at Nar, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, and said, "All your struggles are in vain, follow me back obediently, and wait for the master to deal with it." After finishing speaking, Spider-Man jumped towards Nar, and then his figure disappeared in place in an instant. When it reappeared, it had already come to Nar, and a hand knife slashed Nar's neck. Nar looked at Spider-Man angrily, and opened his mouth to say something, but unfortunately, he passed out before he could say anything. As Nar fainted, the command system of his army was completely paralyzed. Looking at the chaotic camp around, Spider-Man summoned more ghosts again, and then softly ordered, "Go, get rid of those guys." After receiving the order, the ghosts rushed towards the surrounding camp without saying a word. Soon, more screams rang out in the camp. The 100,000 army completely collapsed under the slaughter of the Shadow Corps. In the city hall, Li Yi could not help showing a faint smile on his face as he watched the scene shown in the picture. He is very satisfied with Spider-Man's performance. Okay, the matter is over. Go, contact the TV reporter. Tomorrow, I will announce the existence of the Shadow Kingdom to the whole world, and declare war on Magian by the way. When Li Yi's words sounded, Jin Bing was taken aback for a moment, then nodded abruptly. Understood, sir, I will arrange everything. And just when Li Yi was about to announce the establishment of his kingdom to the world, the heads of Hua Shendon, Beigong, and Meijian looked at the CIA director who hurried into his office, and their faces suddenly became serious. I hope you bring me good news this time. Listening to the head of state's words, the CIA chief shook his head with an ugly face. Führer, I also hope it's good news, but I'm sorry. Just now, my military intelligence officer from the CIA sent the last piece of information. Why? The 100,000 troops led by General Nar were completely annihilated. General Nar and his high-ranking military officers were also taken away. It is unknown whether they are dead or alive. As soon as these words came out, the beautiful head of state shook his body, and then leaned heavily on the backseat, muttering to himself. How is it possible? Chapter 85 A Country Within a Country. Kingdom of Shadows. The whole world was shocked. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. November 25th, sunny. Today is a shameful day for Meijian. Under the report of Niuyue News Media, Niuyue, the economic center of the world, has completely declared that it has separated from Meijian and has become an independent city. At the same time, a new country has officially appeared on this planet. Its name is Black Shadow Kingdom. As soon as this news came out, it shocked the whole world in an instant. On the internet, the word Shadow Kingdom became a hot keyword on the entire internet. All over the world, more than 500 million people are frantically discussing on the internet. Kingdom of Shadows, this name is so strange. Fark, Neo belongs to our beauty tip, that damn Asian, what occupies beauty tip? Hi Da Poo Ben, does anyone know if that guy named Li Yi is from our country, and he actually established a country in Meijian? It's outrageous. Wow, the little big brother is so handsome, I'll lick it as a respect for his looks. Netizens from all over the world gathered here on Washbasin, frantically discussing things related to Li Yi. Before today, they might not know who Li Yi is, but after today, the whole world will remember this name. After all, Li Yi occupies the economic capital of the world's most powerful country, and a key point has not been killed by Meijian. This is where people really feel incredible. And when Li Yi made history in Luoshanji, in a certain villa area, Steve turned off the TV news with an ugly face, got up and walked towards the underground laboratory. Entering the laboratory, Steve saw Tony, who was modifying the armor again at a glance. Since the pair escaped from S.H.I.E.L.D., they left Neo and came to Los Angeles. Although the Stark industry in Niuyue has already been occupied by Li Yi, as Tony, it is naturally not a problem to mobilize the Stark industry outside Niuyue. Through the channels of Stark industry, the two obtained accommodation and various scientific research materials. After that, Tony has been soaking in the laboratory, trying to develop a more powerful armor and completely destroy Li Yi. Tony. Looking at Tony, who was forgetting to eat and sleep, Steve called out. However, Tony, who was obsessed with scientific research, obviously didn't hear Steve's words, so helplessly, Steve could only call out again, Tony. This time Tony finally reacted, he stopped what he was doing, and turned to look at Steve suspiciously. What's wrong? That guy has completely occupied Niuyue, and just now, he has announced to the whole world that Niuyue will break away from the beautiful order and become the capital of the Shadow Kingdom he established. What? Tony lost his voice. During this period of time, he didn't pay attention to the outside world at all. When he heard the news suddenly, even though his Xinsheng had grown a lot, he couldn't help but lose his voice. What about Beigong? They didn't respond. Why not? I used SHIELD's intelligence network to investigate. The operation at Beigong failed. 100,000 soldiers were completely buried outside the city of Niuyue. Speaking of this, Steve's tone couldn't help but become much lower. As a soldier from the military, he naturally has a special affection for the military. Now that the military has lost another 100,000 soldiers, when he thinks about those young men who defended their homes in the country, all of them died in the hands of Li Yi. The anger in Steve's heart can't help but burn. Advertisement, okay, this matter is indeed a bit unacceptable, but we really can't do anything about him now, just wait, it won't take long before my battle armor can be successfully researched. Tony spoke reassuringly. Hearing this, Steve couldn't help but get excited immediately. Do you really think that the armor you developed can completely solve that guy? What's the meaning? Tony stared at Steve, and the atmosphere between the two of them couldn't help becoming tense. But Steve couldn't care about that much anymore. He stared at Tony and said loudly, "Wake up, Tony, your armor is strong enough, but the reason we can't deal with that guy is because we can't kill him. As long as you don't solve this problem, even if the armor you develop is 10 times more powerful, it will be in vain. I don't know what to do now. I need someone to discuss countermeasures with me instead of spending all day in the laboratory, you know?" Steve stared at Tony with wide eyes and said. Tony looked at Steve blankly, then slowly said, "I know what you said, but I don't know how to kill that guy completely, so I can only constantly update strengthening my armor. In this way, at least it can be guaranteed that when we face him next time, even if we can't solve it, we can continue to escape." "No, Tony, we can't escape anymore. That guy has started building his own kingdom. Do you know what this means? It means that Meijian may be completely subverted at any time. Once the beauty tip is overturned, then even if we are still alive, what's the point of everything? Isn't everything we do just to protect this country? Steve's tone was like a machine gun, chattering endlessly, if he could agree with Tony before. But after witnessing Li Yi declaring the founding of the nation, Steve fully realized that the time left for them was running out. Based on his understanding of Li Yi, it is absolutely impossible for Li Yi's ambition to be satisfied with just a woman. The fall of Niuyue is just the beginning. After that, other cities will inevitably fall. Once everything is as he expected, and Li Yi is completely at the peak of beauty, then everything they have done before will become meaningless. It is precisely because of this that Steve at this moment becomes so anxious and aggressive, and he doesn't even want Tony to continue to develop the upgrade armor. And as Steve's voice fell, Tony finally realized his worry, and suddenly, Tony couldn't help frowning. He had to admit that what Steve said made a lot of sense. If Meijian is really subverted by Li Yi, then everything they do will be meaningless. Some people may say that the beautiful tip is gone, and there are other countries in the world. But as two beautiful and sharp people, can they really fight for other countries selflessly? If they could really achieve this level, those two would not be superheroes, but contemporary saints. I understand what you mean. Go ahead and call Banner, let's discuss it together. I don't know if that guy has controlled his power. Seeing Tony let go, a trace of relief appeared on Steve's face. Then without saying a word, he quickly contacted Banner. Advertisement Banner's ability can easily get out of control, so naturally he couldn't stay in the villa, but was arranged in an exclusive training ground. Asking for flowers. 20 minutes after Steve finished his phone call, Banner, who looked a bit shy, appeared in the villa. Steve, Tony. Entering the door, looking at the two people sitting in the living room, Banner couldn't help but greet them. The two nodded in response, then asked Banner to sit down, and a meeting with only 3 people officially started, looking very shabby. But there is no way, basically all those who were eligible to participate in the meeting were killed by Li Yi. Although there are still many people left in S.H.I.E.L.D., they are basically ordinary agents. These people are okay against ordinary people, but they are useless against Li Yi. Naturally, they have no qualifications for meetings. As Banner took his seat, Steve soon repeated what he had just said to Tony to Banner. After listening to Steve's worries, Banner's face also became serious. I understand. I really can't let that Asian continue to be rampant. Do you have any plans? I have no objection and cooperate unconditionally. Banner looked at the two of Steve with a serious face. Upon hearing this, a trace of embarrassment flashed across Steve's face. Oh, we don't have any plans, so we asked you to come over and discuss. Let me figure out a way to. Banner pointed at himself in astonishment. Steve and Tony nodded at the same time. Seeing this, Banner couldn't help scratching his head. As you know, I don't have much contact with these things, so I don't know what to do. The only thing I can do is to ensure that I don't lose control when I want to do something. Different from the original trajectory of fate, in this world, although Banner also killed military personnel, he was not chased and killed by the military because Li Yi was in front to attract firepower. Therefore, the current him has slowly accepted the fact that he has become a monster, and he does not want to return to his original state. As Banner's voice fell, Steve and Tony couldn't help but look at each other, with a hint of helplessness flashing in their eyes. They had hoped that Banner would have some special ideas, but unexpectedly, he turned out to be another no-brainer. It would be great if Nick was here, maybe he would have a way, at least to limit Li Yi. Steve couldn't help but sighed. He didn't think Nick had anything before, but after Nick died, he took over the overall situation in place of Nick, and only then did he feel the pressure of being a commander. Therefore, any wrong decision of yours may lead to the destruction of the entire team. Especially when facing an opponent like Li Yi, if you don't have strong strength and a perfect plan, it is really difficult, very difficult to deal with Li Yi. However, he said that he didn't intend to, but he sounded intentional. When Steve mentioned Nick, Tony's eyes suddenly flickered, and a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. Do you think the world we live in is really unique? Tony said suddenly, and as his words fell, Steve looked at Tony in a daze, not knowing why he was saying this. On the other hand, Banner, who heard Tony's words, seemed to think of something, and pondered. Not sure, the universe is too vast, and our planet is just a speck of dust in the universe. No one is sure whether there are other worlds, maybe there is no thousand. Chapter 86. The Newborn Lord of Dimensions. Save the world. Victor, open black lens bracket subscribe close black lens bracket. Tony and Banner were playing charades on the side, and Steve on the side had a headache when he heard it. He could understand every word the two said. But after they were connected together, he couldn't understand it. You two, don't say something I don't understand, it will make me feel superfluous. Steve grumbled. Hearing this, Tony didn't hold back, and directly said straight to the point. What you just said reminded me, Nick, is he really dead? Or, Nick in this world is dead, but Nick in other worlds is also dead. Captain, you should talk about the parallel space theory. Parallel space, or multi-universe is more appropriate. In theory, the world we live in may overlap with infinite universes, and there may still be us in those universes. Since we can't deal with Li Yi now, can we try to open the multi-universe and let us in other worlds help us? Tony put forward his own idea, and as his words fell, Steve on the side immediately stuck Tony with a hellish expression. How should I put it? Tony's idea cannot be said to be whimsical, it can only be said to be daydreaming. Leaving aside the 050 question of whether there are other worlds, the key point is how to open the multi-universe. Is it just relying on a multi-universe theory? Compared with such other thoughts, Steve suddenly felt that Tony continued to steady the armor, which seemed not a bad thing. Tony, I know that Li Yi puts a lot of pressure on us, but you have to believe that we will defeat him one day. Otherwise, you go to rest for a while, and today's meeting ends here. Steve suggested. Hearing that, Tony also knew that his thoughts were a little crazy, but he didn't know what to do at the moment, but this thought directly took root in his heart. He didn't refute Steve either, just nodded silently, then turned and walked towards the laboratory. Just as he was about to leave the living room, Tony stopped suddenly and turned to look at Banner. Dr. Banner, I need your help. Are you sure? That's just a theory? Banner said helplessly. But this is also a method, isn't it? Maybe we may not succeed, but I still want to try. If we dare not even try, then we will never have hope, right? Well, you convinced me. What do I need? Banner got up and walked towards Tony with a look of helplessness on his face. Hearing this, Tony laughed and then entered the laboratory with Nay. Seeing the backs of the two disappearing, Steve opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end he didn't say a word, and he sighed helplessly. Although he didn't agree with Tony's idea, so far, he really didn't have a good solution. If this is the case, it's better to let Tony try. And just as Tony and his group were trying, Niu Yu, the Empire State Building. Compared with the City Hall, Li Yi still prefers the scenery of the Empire State Building, so under his will, the former headquarters of Jinbin has transformed into the official residence of Niu Yue. Boss, the press conference was very successful. At present, we have made a name for ourselves all over the world. So what do we do next? Jin Bing stood opposite Li Yi and asked respectfully in a low voice. Hearing this, Li Yi, who was leaning on the office chair, tapped the table with his index finger and said unhurriedly, of course it is to occupy other cities. A date with a girl can't satisfy me. Advertisement. Next, you continue to choose the right city to take it down. Is there any problem? Us? Jin showed a little doubt. Who are we? After the words fell, a black shadow suddenly rose from the ground. Spider-Man walked out from the darkness and said in a relaxed tone, you are definitely me. Looking at Spider-Man, Kim frowned, not liking his appearance. Not only because of his previous enmity with Spider-Man, but also because of the appearance of Spider-Man, he lost the status of one man above 10,000. You two, each lead the Legion, respectively, the next city, the old rules, I will see the result within 10 days, is there any problem? No problem. Jin and Spider-Man shook their heads at the same time. Seeing this, Li Yi waved his hand, motioning for the two to leave to prepare. Without procrastinating, the two turned around and left the office. Walking out of the office, as the office door closed, the well-behaved Spider-Man suddenly kicked Jin Bing. His attack was very sudden, but Jin Bing reacted instantly, like a fist that was half the size of an adult's head and slammed fiercely at Spider-Man. Boom! There was a loud noise, fists and feet collided, and Spider-Man and Jin Bing took a step back at the same time. Call out, Fatty Man, it seems that your strength has improved a lot. Spider-Man whistled and sneered. Although both of them are now under Li Yi's command and are absolutely loyal to Li Yi, apart from this, they are still them. Just as Kim doesn't like Spider-Man, Spider-Man doesn't look like Kim. After all, he had dealt with Jin Bing before, but suffered a lot. To each other, I didn't expect you, a loser, to crawl out of hell. You are so kind, sir. Jin Bin looked at Spider-Man coldly and sneered. I don't want to talk too fast with you. Do you want to compare and see who can complete the task ordered by the master this time? Spider-Man stared at Jin Bin and said slowly. Hearing this, Jin Bing was not afraid at all. Then BB, whoever loses, then cut off a finger of that person. Make a deal. Spider-Man nodded, accepted the bed directly, and then ignored Jin Bing, and his figure directly sank into the darkness. Looking at this scene, Jin also raised his legs and walked towards the elevator, and finally took the elevator and disappeared on the top floor of the Empire State Building. Li Yi didn't know about the bed between the two at the door. Now that he has temporarily dealt with the girl's appointment, another matter should also be put on the agenda. Go meet Victor and Reed. These two guys are hard to see, they are both overly smart guys. Before, Li Yi went to Reed to study Liu Pang. Now that Liu Pang disappeared, he didn't need to find two more people. But now, Niu Yue has become his territory, and these two guys staying in his territory really made him a little uneasy, so he naturally went to have a look. Advertisement Victor, it's hard to say, Li Yi can't figure out this guy's situation for the time being. But Reed, either use it for yourself or destroy it for yourself. Having made up his mind, Li Yi snapped his fingers, and his figure instantly turned into a shadow, blended into the ground, and disappeared into the office. The Science and Technology Building is where Reed's laboratory is located. At this moment, Reed and his research team are making final preparations for the outer space. 3 days later, the once-in-a-thousand-year space storm is about to appear. This is Reed's last chance, and he will not allow himself to miss it. Therefore, it is natural to make full preparations in advance. And when all of them were busy, Li Yi's figure slowly stepped out from the shadows. Glancing at the busy crowd, Li Yi's eyes quickly locked on the four of them. Reed, Johnny, Susan, Ben. Looking at the goal of his trip, Li Yi couldn't help but smile. Just as he was about to step forward, suddenly, everything in front of him froze instantly, as if time had paused. Seeing this magical and weird scene, Li Yi frowned, and then looked at the space in front of him. In the next second, the space in front of him was like the surface of water, with waves of ripples, and then a figure slowly emerged from it. Looking at the young man standing in front of him, a name instantly appeared in Li Yi's mind. Victor. You know me? Victor's tone was a little surprised. Do not know. Li Yi shook his head. Hearing this, Victor didn't care, but bowed slightly to Li Yi, and said with a smile on his face. Unexpectedly, a newborn master of dimension can be attracted to this small laboratory of mine. It is an honor for me to come. The Lord of Dimensions? Are you talking about me? Li Yi thought with some surprise in his heart, but his face remained calm, staring at Victor. Li Yi, you should be called by this name. Why? Although I don't know why you came here, but I have nothing to do with you, Mr. Li. Can you tell me the purpose of your coming here? The purpose is very simple. I want to take those 4 people away. Li Yi pointed to Reed and said. As soon as these words came out, the smile on Victor's face suddenly subsided a lot. Mr. Li, it's no problem if you want to take them away, but 5.3, it must be after they help me complete the experiment. What if I want to take them away now? Then I'm afraid, Mr. Li can't make your wish come true. Although what I'm here is just a duplication, you're not at your peak either. If you really want to fight, who wins and who loses is still unknown. I personally don't want to conflict with Mr. Li, but if you insist on taking them away now, then I can only say sorry. Victor's tone was soft and he acted like a gentleman. If Li Yi didn't know the horror of this guy, who would have imagined that such a handsome guy is one of the world's supervillains? Also, one thing, Mr. Li, maybe you don't know it yet, the world has already started to save itself. What's the meaning? Li Yi frowned, and Victor continued to explain. Your dimension has begun to invade this world, making the world feel a crisis. Next, Mr. Li, you may be in big trouble. I don't think that you will be in this world. It's a good choice to start a war with me. Hearing this, Li Yi immediately thought of the special tasks released by the system, occupying the city, resurrecting the general. Could it be that the dimension occupation refers to this?